Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Medical Board of California quarterly board meeting. Pursuant to the provisions of Governor Gavin Newsom's Executive Order N29-20, dated March 17, 2020, this meeting is being conducted via WebEx. Public comments will be heard for each agenda item for individuals wishing to do so. To be ready for public comment, we ask you to please ensure that your comments can be heard clearly by being connected to the audio of this meeting through the proper method. If you're having difficulty hearing the audio of this meeting, it could be because the device you are on has bandwidth limitations. If you do have difficulty hearing the audio of this meeting using your device, please click the ellipsis button at the bottom of the WebEx application or the audio and video menu option at the top of the WebEx application and then select Switch Audio. You'll see an option to call in and will be provided with a telephone number, access code, and attendee ID that you can use to connect to the meeting via phone. Using the information provided, it will automatically disconnect your device's audio and connect your phone to the name you joined the meeting with. By using this method, if you are having audio problems with your device, this will still allow you to participate and hear the audio of the board meeting. Please see the instructions on how to connect on the last page of the meeting agenda for step-by-step WebEx instructions, including screenshots. Thank you, President Lawson. You can now start the meeting.
Sean, thank you so much. Welcome to all of the members of the Medical Board of California and to the many members of the public who are joining us this afternoon. This is the November quarterly board meeting of the Medical Board of California. I'd like to first ask that all members please remute your lines, turn any devices to silent so that there aren't any interruptions during the meeting. Since this meeting is being conducted via WebEx, before board members and staff speak, I would like you all to announce your names just for clarity of the official record. All board members are able to unmute themselves during the meeting, but please do place yourselves back on mute when not speaking to reduce background noise for all participants. Following this online meeting etiquette will ensure the best experience for all of us. During each call for comments from board members and speakers, we will ensure that all comments that can be accommodated are heard before we proceed with the agenda. Government Code Section 11126.5 allows a board to remove people who willfully interrupt a meeting and to clear the room or virtual space if order cannot be restored by muting or removing the disruptive people. We will have a designated time on the agenda for public comment, and we will ask for public comment on each agenda item. This is an official business meeting of the Medical Board of California, and as such, disruptions will not be tolerated. The board welcomes public comments on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comments prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. During each agenda item, the host that's moderating the WebEx event will activate the hand raising and the Q&A features of WebEx, and will ask anyone wishing to make public comment to please indicate so by replying yes in the Q&A window or by raising their hand. The host will then call on individuals who indicated they wish to make public comments by name. When called upon, the host will unmute the microphone of the individual and they will have 3 minutes to make their public comment. The host will audibly announce when 15 seconds remain, to conclude the public comment. And after the 3 minutes have lapsed, the individual will be placed back on mute. Only one public comment on each agenda item is allowed per attendee. As Sean mentioned, please do see page 4 of the agenda for WebEx instructions on how to connect from the link on the agenda and for additional helpful instructions. During agenda item 2, public comments on items not on the agenda, the board has limited the total public comment period for individuals to 40 minutes. Therefore, after 40 minutes, no further comments will be accepted. During public comment on any other agenda item, 20 minutes will be allowed for the comment period. After 20 minutes, no further comments will be accepted. And again, each person will be limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. The board's IT staff will assist me in receiving the public comments via WebEx during this meeting. And I'd like to remind all commenters and all speakers to please stay on topic and keep your comments to the allotted time or less. Today's meeting is going to be run in accordance with the Open Meeting Act as required by law. And we do plan to end today by 6:30 p.m. as indicated on the agenda. I will now call the meeting to order at 2:07 p.m. And prior to calling the roll, which we will do in a moment, I have some brief opening remarks based on recent experiences of the medical board. Regrettably, In the past several months, there's been a concerted effort underway to discredit the good and important work of the Medical Board of California to provide access to quality medical care and protect consumers from negligent, incompetent, and unethical physicians. For reasons which are not clear to me, this effort has intentionally disparaged the reputations and intentions of individual board members and the medical board staff members who are entrusted to do the important work of protecting California consumers and ensuring all Californians have access to quality medical care. Shockingly, it has been suggested that the medical board is not concerned about patients or patient care. This is false. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. The Medical Board of California is one of the oldest and largest consumer protection agencies in California, and for a time, I am its leader. It is my duty and my obligation to provide the public with factual, trustworthy information, and it is also my duty and obligation to ensure that misinformation and disinformation do not detract from our board's work to protect patients and consumers. We all come to this work and to this board for different reasons, but we all share the common goal and mission of protecting California consumers. I had the privilege of joining this board 8 months after my father died suddenly and unexpectedly in the backyard of my childhood home. My dad was a burned out physician who had neglected his own health and well-being to serve others. And frankly, because he was a doctor, I believe he didn't receive the straightforward, honest medical advice that he deserved. I'm here in his honor to help protect the integrity of the profession he loved by ensuring consumers have access to quality care and are protected from harm. You all have come to this work for your own individual reasons, whether you're here because of your patient advocacy work or your commitment to ensuring a fair regulatory environment, or because of a desire simply to be of service. I know you're here for the right reasons. It's a privilege to serve on this board with you and to work closely with our trusted staff, a group of people who are committed to doing the hard daily work that is required to protect consumers. Collectively, we're committed to protect the public with the tools and resources needed to make good healthcare choices, and we're committed to take swift and certain action to protect the public from bad doctors. It is extremely disappointing to me that your motives have been questioned, that you have been called insincere and corrupt. After all, you are some of the most thoughtful, able, and dedicated people I know. The public is entitled to the truth, and the truth is that this board is comprised of good people and our cause is noble. We don't always do perfect work. We don't always have perfect evidence or a perfect case, and there are certainly many opportunities for improvement. I welcome input from stakeholders, and it is fair for the public to question the effectiveness and the efficacy of our processes and procedures. It is right for the public and those entrusted with oversight of our board to hold us accountable and to seek reforms to make us better. But making us better should not involve personal attacks or demonstrably false allegations. The truth is that our collective public service is of value and it protects real people every day. Our members and our staff have good intentions and they are part of this board for the right reasons. Each day, this organization takes on the challenging work to investigate complaints into the conduct of the physicians we license and to discipline those physicians who are negligent or incompetent or exhibit criminal behavior. All of you, our board members and our staff, take on this important work to protect consumers. And for that work, I am grateful, and I know California is too. Ms. Caldwell, please call the roll.
Mr. Brooks.
Here.
Ms. Campaverdi.
Present.
Dr. Gonadev.
Here.
Dr. Hawkins.
Here.
Dr. Helzer.
Here.
Dr. Kraus.
Here.
Ms. Lawson.
Here.
Ms. Lubiano.
Here.
Dr. Mahmood. Mr. Rue.
Present.
Dr. Thorpe.
Here.
Mr. Watkins.
Present.
Dr. Yip.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. A quorum is present, and board members, please do remute your computers. I would like to remind the members again that we will be taking a roll call vote on all action items. We're going to move on to agenda item 2, public comments on items not on the agenda. Before I ask for these public comments, I would ask individuals making comments to not discuss any pending complaints, pending license applications, or pending disciplinary actions that may come before the board for a decision. Such discussions are considered ex parte communications, as they could provide information to members that is outside of the record in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. Therefore, such discussions could create a conflict and could lead to a board decision being challenged in Superior Court. The board can receive comments regarding the board's processes in general, but it cannot receive comments on specific case circumstances where the decision is still pending. In addition, the board requests that the public address the board as a whole and not individual members. Please be aware that public comment during this agenda item should provide information to the board members and is not a discussion between the board members and the public. The only action board members can take is to listen to the comments and decide whether they'd like a future agenda item on the topic. No other action can be taken at this meeting. Though this may seem at times like the board members are not being responsive, following these guidelines is critical to ensure the rules of the Open Meeting Act are followed and to avoid compromising the speaker's goals or the board's mission. If you want to comment on an agenda item, please do wait until we get to that agenda item. Comments at this time are only for items not on the agenda. And please do limit your comments to 3 minutes. I will now ask the host to call for public comments. Sean?
Thank you, President Lawson. The Q&A box is open for anyone wishing to make a public comment, and as well as the hand-raising function is now always active in the new version of WebEx that we are using. The new version of WebEx allows us to have these closed captioning features for those that would wish to view those as well. And it will also let call-in users who have only connected via the phone and not connected via a computer make a public comment as well. So for the call-in users that I see on the line, if you wish to make a public comment at this time, you can press *3 in order to raise your hand, and that toggles your hand up and down. It'll give you feedback as you do it. And then when we're called upon, you will press *6 to unmute your line once we call on you and have put you in the role to speak. I am only able to identify you by your area code and the first 3 digits of your phone numbers. So please do know that if you are making a public comment, that information will be said aloud. First up, we have Jen Camel. Jen, give me just a minute to open your line. And there's also a prompt to, when we go to unmute your line, you have to confirm it on your side now to open up the line. So Jen, are you with us? I see you've unmuted your line.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you. Hi, I'm Jen Camel, VBAC Facts founder, and today I represent thousands of Californians when I asked the Medical Board of California to join the California Association of Licensed Midwives in co-sponsoring legislation to create a licensed midwife board. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, requesting, we have Rosanna Davis. Rosanna, give me a second to open your line. Sorry, there's a long list today. Rosanna, you should be getting a request to open your line.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. This is Rosanna Davis. I'm president of California Association of Licensed Midwives, and I'm wanting to thank the medical board for including an endorsement of a licensed midwife board in the medical board's California 2020 Sunset Review report. While the pandemic limited the legislative scope of Sunset Review in 2021, it nevertheless presented a welcome opportunity to raise awareness about the need to establish regulatory equity for licensed midwives in the state of California. Looking ahead to 2022 legislative cycle, we invite the board to join CALM in co-sponsoring legislation to establish a licensed midwife board under the Department of Consumer Affairs. We're happy to share with the board and board staff a draft of the legislation that we submitted to committee staff earlier this year, as we continue to meet with legislative staff to educate them about the reasons why the regulatory structure currently fails to adequately protect the public. We have also commissioned a fiscal analysis based on budget reports, projected revenue from increased fees, and the licensed midwife fund's existing reserves, which clearly shows that a licensed midwife board is well positioned to operate efficiently and cost effectively. Given these projections, as well as the fact that licensed midwifery is a small profession subject to cost recovery, we anticipate that the transition to a board will be budget neutral. I look forward to engaging with the board and board staff on further discussions about our legislative proposal and the opportunity to partner once again with Medical Board on an important public policy issue. Please don't hesitate to follow up with me directly. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Susan Lauren. Susan, you should be getting prompted to open your line. Trying one more time. Susan Lauren, if you're there, you're getting a prompt on your computer now to unmute your line.
Okay, got it.
We got you.
Hi.
Go ahead. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, I'm Susan Lauren, patient safety educator and activist. I'd like to thank TJ Watkins and Senator Jerry Hill for their ethics and courage in standing up for patient safety and exposing medical corruption in California. California plastic surgeons have harmed and killed healthy consumers for decades. They do scams, assaults, experiments, pile-on procedures, have students and techs operate, forge records, slander and sue victims, and cover for each other. Since the last meeting, multiple serious accusations showed up against plastic surgeons. More women are dead and harmed due to your unwholesome, unregulated plastic surgery. Accused surgeons often have a bad history, operate aggressively, and ignore science. Dr. Leslie Moglen was sued several dozen times between 1983 and 1997. In 1996, Jennifer Ha died due to Moglen's gross negligence. Ha's daughter, Susan Liu, performs a show about how her mother's death impacted her life. One of Moglen's victims said, "They wouldn't let an auto shop be open this long with so many complaints. How do they let someone continue to practice medicine when it involves life and death?" I've asked for consumer protections against plastic and cosmetic surgeons since 2011. I've called this board for 4 years. I share science-based evidence about the negative health and aesthetic effects of adipose alteration and greedy, dishonest behavior of the surgeons. The medical board continues to enable surgical assault and hires bad doctors as experts. This leaves the field wide open for unscrupulous doctors to put people under anesthesia in private ambulatory centers and assault, mutilate, or kill them. More people will continue to end up disfigured, disabled, or dead, guaranteed. Dr. Mahur Anus had his license revoked for a death he caused in 2015. He did suction lipectomy to the back, thighs, arms, ankles, and fat transfer to the buttocks. A woman under 50 bled to death. California has normalized harmful, unnecessary procedures and protects the profiting perpetrators. In the Anus case, the medical board used Terry Dubrow as their expert. Dubrow lied in civil court on behalf of Saul Berger, who mutilated me after he put me unconscious. 3 more women are dead. Using plastic surgeons as experts for each other creates a cyclic problem. They operate against science and harm many people. The stock exchange—
30 seconds remain.
Thank you. The stock exchange is impacted by plastic surgery. Human tissue acquisition is big business. Plastic surgeons who harmed women I know invest in medical devices. A medical board member made an $800,000 film sponsored by a medical device company that plays in part like an ad for
10
plastic
seconds
surgery.
remain.
The assault Dr. Berger did to me was against need, consent, or reason. I'm asking you again, make surgical assault a crime. Do real investigations for surgical bad.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Marion Hollingsworth. Marion, let me find your line. Okay, Marion, you should be getting a prompt to open your line from your end. Okay, Marion, we will come back. Next up, I have Tania McCracken. Tania, you getting a prompt on your end? Tania, your line is open. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tanya McCracken, and I'm a licensed midwife here in California. And I believe that families would be well served if there were an independent midwifery board. So I'm asking that the medical board work with the California Association of Licensed Midwives on legislation to create such a board. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Let's try Marion Hollingsworth again. Marion, are you seeing the prompt? There we go. Please go ahead, Marion.
All right, we're good?
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Marion Hollingsworth, and I'm a patient safety advocate. I would like to strongly urge you to have a special study session for all board members to review your conflict of interest policies as well as your own disciplinary guidelines. As you stated, the board has come under increased criticism of late because of your continued reluctance to follow your own guidelines when disciplining doctors and for using reprimands when your guidelines call for probation. A prime example of this is a recent case where a surgeon was arrested for a DUI with a blood alcohol level of 0.28, 3.5 times the legal limit. At the time of his arrest in March of 2018, this doctor's boss, according to your own documents, was the president of the medical board. While there's nothing in the documents to infer that this board president had any hand in the discipline, nonetheless, this doctor was let off with just a reprimand. If you look at your guidelines, the minimum recommended discipline is 5 years probation for conviction of a misdemeanor and 5 years for unprofessional conduct. Also, any doctor with an alcohol level much lower than this is usually ordered to undergo routine biotesting, but not this doctor. What is surprising in the disciplinary document is that it sounds like the board is the doctor's attorney. You say this doctor has not had a drink since his arrest. How do you know if there has been no routine testing? Are you that gullible? Your document also contains bias-sounding comments such as, in his otherwise disciplined and law-abiding life, he has made one mistake. How do you know this was his only mistake in or out of the OR? You only know of this mistake because he was arrested. Also the line, respondents' embarrassment and remorse were convincing and compelling. It's obvious whose side you are on. He could be just a good actor. Was this doctor given special consideration because of his connections to a board president and the embarrassment that would cause? It's hard to ignore that question. If you're trying to convince the media and the public that the medical board does not favor doctors, cases like this give light to that claim. The board needs to review its conflict of interest policies and its own guidelines and put them into practice if it's going to change minds. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next here we have Galen Richards. Galen, let me go ahead and open your line. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I'm a midwifery consumer, and I'd like to ask that the Medical Board of California join the California Association of Licensed Midwives in co-sponsoring legislation to create a licensed midwife board. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Barbara Christensen. Barbara, give me a moment to open your line. Should be getting a prompt there on your screen now. Barbara will come back around. Up next, we have Teresa Yu. Teresa, let me open your line. You should be getting a prompt.
Thank you.
Please.
My name is Teresa Yu. I'm board president of California Families for Access to Midwives, representing thousands of supporters and consumers in California, and a consumer of midwifery services myself. I would like to ask the medical board to please join California Association of Licensed Midwives in sponsoring legislation to create a licensed midwife board. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. I'm going to go back to Barbara Christensen real quick, see if we can get you on the line. Let's see. Barbara, should be getting a prompt on your end. Okay, must be away from the device. Next up, we have Shonda Wesley. Shonda, let me get your line open. Should be getting a prompt on your end. Go ahead, Shonda.
Thank you so much. I appreciate hearing Ms. Lawson's point of view at the beginning of this meeting. As a harmed patient, I strongly disagree. I encourage the board to live up to its role of being a true consumer protection agency. Until then, we will continue to speak. You will hear our voices here and in public and in the press, whether it makes you uncomfortable or not. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Maya de Paula Hanika. Let me get your line here real quick. There you go, Maya, if you could. Your line is open, Maya. Would you like to proceed? Maya, I see that you have accepted the unmute request on your side, but it doesn't look like your microphone's working because we're not hearing any audio coming through. I'll try to come back through and you can check to see if you can get your microphone working. Okay, so next up we have call-in user from the 765 area code. I've gone ahead and sent the request to you. You can press *6 to unmute your phone. You should be being prompted audibly on the phone as well. Go ahead, call-in user, if you could state your name.
Hi, my name is May Williamson, and I'm a midwifery consumer, and I would like to ask the Medical Board of California to join the California Association of Licensed Midwives in co-sponsoring legislation to create a licensed midwife board. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have a call-in user from the 510 area code. You should be receiving a prompt. You can press *6 on your phone to unmute your line from your end.
Hi, my name is Patrick Hovel. I'm a consumer of midwifery services from a California licensed midwife, and my family supports an independent California midwifery board. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have a call-in user from the 408 area code. You can press *6 to unmute your line now.
Hello, my name is
Please.
Lindsay Amador. I'm a consumer of midwifery services, and I would like to ask the Medical Board of California to join the California Association of Licensed Midwives in co-sponsoring legislation to create a licensed midwife board. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. And the last call-in user I show is a 925 area code. You can press *6 to unmute your line now.
Hello, my name is Mimosa Abraham, and I am a consumer of midwifery services, and I would also like to ask the Medical Board of California to join the California Association of Licensed Midwives in co-sponsoring legislation to create a licensed midwife board. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. I'm going to go back to Maya de Paula. I'm sorry, let me find your line again. Maya should be getting a request to unmute your line now. From your computer there, Maya, you'd have to, or your mobile device, you'd have to accept the unmute request. I'm not seeing you accepting the request, so I'm going to move on here to Curtis Thompson. Curtis, sent you a request to open your line.
Good afternoon. I filed a complaint against a doctor around January 2020. I received a letter back asking me to fill out an authorization for my medical records, which I did and returned to you on February 11th, 2020. I've heard nothing from you since. I even called in about a year ago and told you about this, and still nothing has happened. I'd like to know what's going on with my complaint and why no one is keeping me informed of its progress. It seems that the advocates are not the only ones who have a low opinion of the medical board. I know I can't speak specifically about my complaint, but this doctor was very dismissive when I told her I was going to file a complaint. She was extremely confident when she told me I was wasting my time. She said the Medical Board of California was, quote, inefficient, and that my complaint would come to naught. Her final words were, "You're foolish for filing a complaint. I have no doubt. Nothing will happen to me. I might be inconvenienced and have to fill out some paperwork, but nothing will happen to me." At the time I filed my complaint, I was warned by others that it was probably an exercise in futility, but I didn't want to believe the naysayers. I wanted to believe that the MBC was doing their job and something would come of my complaint. It seems the doctor and the naysayers were right. It appears that this doctor is going to get off scot-free and be able to treat other patients as badly as she treated me. My experience with you and what I've heard from others leads me to believe that the California Medical Board is a complete and utter waste. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Eric Andrus. Eric, you should be receiving a request on your screen.
Here.
We can. Please go ahead.
First, WebEx has caused my computer to crash 4 times just since the beginning of the meeting, so you may lose me, much to your chagrin, I'm sure. Also, WebEx is requiring people to sign in, and the open meeting laws prohibit you from requiring people to identify themselves, so you're once again breaking the law. Hey, how about that LA Times article yesterday? Just in case viewers haven't seen it, the LA Times published an article yesterday titled, "Whistleblower or Flamethrower? California Medical Board Members Calls Out His Colleagues." The Patient Safety League and I think I can speak for most of the advocates and those wronged by this medical board that we support TJ's efforts, whistleblower complaint, and request to have this board officially audited. 100%. We are grateful to you, TJ. Shame on any of the rest of you, especially Howard Krause, for trying to make him feel bad for standing up for patient safety and holding this board accountable. Stay tuned. Another LA Times expose article will be out soon. I also want to remember Judge Catherine Feinstein for attempting to hold the board accountable. She actually left the board because her standards are higher than the board's. Those are her words from her resignation letter. And Dr. Michael Bishop, who boldly stated that the board was broken 5 years ago at the October meeting. Shortly after both of those board members spoke out, they were gone from the board. Christina, your crocodile tears a la Brett Kavanaugh was quite a show, but a bunch of baloney. We're not buying it. Just because you say the board cares in no way means that it does. Actions speak louder than words. You all sit on your hands and you say you're tied by the laws in the legislature, but then sit there and don't ask them for change. For instance, what's happened to the quarterly patient advocate meetings that Bill said, and I quote from the minutes, will proceed on a quarterly basis? We all set aside time in our lives so we can attend these meetings, and not even an announcement that it wouldn't happen this time? That's just rude. I emailed Aaron Bone and asked him about this, and his response was, quote, "The next advocates meeting. Nothing has been announced yet, but stay tuned," leading me to believe it was still on for today. And speaking of Aaron Bone, we sent emails to both Aaron and Carlos Villatoro inquiring about how disciplinary actions are chosen to highlight on social media. Carlos, as usual, gave a very lame response that didn't answer the question, so I inquired of Aaron Bone. He wrote back in similar fashion, not really answering the question. So I asked again. He finally came back with, quote, "The process works generally like this. Periodically, enforcement board staff email out to subscribers in batches notifications.
30 seconds remain.
What?
30 seconds remain.
Oh, God, now you made me lose time. I'll have to say it tomorrow now. Instead, they just pick these cases to go on social media like they're pulling them from a bingo cage.
10 seconds.
Oh my God, now I've lost my train of thought. I'll have to call back. Thanks, John.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Jeffrey Gordon. Jeffrey, you should be receiving a prompt on your end.
My name is Jeffrey Gordon. I have to say I'm in good company. I was a member of this board for 8 years, some 40 years ago, during which time we were loudly praised by the people of the state of California for aggressive consumer protection. I'm calling with two observations. One is, since September of last year, I have filed 4 formal complaints against doctors licensed by the board for their outrageous statements about the treatment and existence of COVID-19, which arguably resulted in many deaths. I have received no response from the board with regard to these complaints. The first one was filed on September 26, 2020. So number one, I'm asking whether the board should have a routine response to people who make complaints. Number two, whether the board has a policy coherent with that of the Federation of State Medical Licensing Boards, and as of yesterday with the American Medical Association, that it is unprofessional conduct to spew falsehoods about vaccinations, treatments, and management of COVID-19. I am very disappointed that the board has not stated a public policy yet of this matter. I find it to be reprehensible. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, I have a call-in user with the 510 area code again. Call-in user, you can identify or press *6 and identify yourself. Call-in user, that's *6 to unmute your line.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Turbin. I'm from Stockton, California, and I would like to ask the Medical Board of California to join the California Association of Licensed Midwives in co-sponsoring legislation to create a licensed midwife board. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Jeff Rizzo. Jeff, you should be seeing a prompt on your screen.
No.
We can hear you. Please go ahead. Okay, I see Jeff's gone back on mute. I'm going to lower your hand, Jeff. If you'd like to make another public comment, please raise your hand again. Next up, we have Julian Diamond. Julian, are you there? Should be getting a prompt on your screen to unmute your mic. Your line's open, Julian. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Julian Hardman. I'm a midwifery consumer, and I would like to ask the Medical Board of California to join the California Association of Licensed Midwives and co-sponsoring legislation to create a licensed midwife board. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Michelle Wellborn. Michelle, should be getting a prompt on your side to open your line. Michelle, you should be seeing that prompt. If you'd like to make your public comment, please go ahead and hit it. Okay, I'll try to circle back in a minute. Next up, we have Rosie Arthur's-daughter. Rosie, you should be getting the prompt on your screen now to unmute. Okay, next up, we have Sandra Perez. Sandra, you should be getting the prompt on your screen to unmute. You're unmuted, Sandra. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Sandra Perez. I'm calling in from Hesperia, California. I'm a patient safety advocate with the Fairness Act. And I respectfully disagree with the point of view from Ms. Lawson that this board is actually doing their job. I have submitted over 24 complaints with the medical board, including cited and sourced documentation from legitimate sources such as Johns Hopkins, the Mayo Clinic, the National Institute of Health. And every single time this board says there's nothing to see here. And then to read in the LA Times article that behind closed doors, comments such as, "It's just one child that died," is absolutely reprehensible to read. It's not just one child. Her name is Jordan. Her name is Jesse. Her name is Demi. His name is Malachi. And the list goes on and on. You should never take the stance that it's just one child that died. This board needs to do better. You need to stand up to the CMA and not represent and fundraise for them, such as one board member is alleged to be doing. You need to stand up and support legislation for patient safety. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. I see Jeff Rizzo has his hand up again. Let's try this again. Jeff, you able to unmute?
Can you
There
hear
go,
me?
Jeff. We can. Please go ahead.
I'm going to finish Eric Andrus' comment since Sean broke his train of thought. And speaking of Aaron Bone, we sent emails to both Aaron and Carlos Villatoro inquiring about how disciplinary actions are chosen to highlight on social media. Carlos, as usual, gave a very lame response that didn't answer the question, so I inquired of Aaron Bone. He wrote back in a similar fashion, not really answering the question. So I asked again. He finally came back with, quote, "The process works generally like this. Periodically, enforcement, board staff email out to subscribers in batches notifications when those documents are available online. If public affairs staff have time to publish links on social media when those emails go out, or time permitting, have an opportunity to go back and catch up a bit on prior emails, they will do so. Staff do not read through the accusations decisions looking for certain cases to post or not post." So essentially, he's saying they don't have the time to inform the public via social media of important and dangerous disciplinary actions. Instead, they just pick them like pulling a number from a bingo cage and post them. Oddly, though, 95% of the ones they do pick are extremely lame cases compared to others. The most egregious cases almost never get highlighted on social media. Coincidence? I think not. And there should be no reason that the staff members that do read the accusations and decisions can't highlight important ones to the PR staff to use on social media. Aaron's response was ridiculous. Do you all accept that they only do public outreach when time permits? Thanks.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Michelle Welborn. Michelle, go ahead and try to unmute again.
Hi, my name is Michelle Welborn. I'm a licensed midwife in San Francisco, and I'm urging the board to join the California Association of Licensed Midwives and co-sponsor legislation for an independent licensed midwifery board. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Rosie Arthur's daughter. Rosie, you should be getting the prompt there. Your line's open, Rosie. Okay, Rosie, it seems your line open. You successfully unmuted, but your microphone doesn't seem to be picking up your voice. So let me go ahead and put you back here, and we'll try on you again before we get to the end of the list here. Next up, let's see, we already got through Sandra Perez. Virginia Farr. Virginia, are you there? You should be getting the prompt.
Can you hear me?
We can. Please go ahead.
Okay, this has crashed my phone like 10 times, so I don't know if I'll stay online. I'm almost speechless with this whole thing. I hear Miss Larson saying what she said, and I don't believe that, because when people die for 10 hours and that doctor is not actually in jail, it makes us think things are corrupt. When babies die over and over from a certain doctor and nothing's done or not enough is done, it makes us think things are corrupt. When people are surgically battered and nothing is done, it makes us think things are corrupt. And it's very hard to believe those words when we see otherwise. And my personal experience of losing 12 years of my life to so many doctors of medical errors, and I know the board would do nothing with those cases, and I didn't go to the board. Because if they can't do anything about a woman being surgically assaulted and losing her quality of life, or do anything about a woman bleeding to death for 10 hours, how are they going to do anything for my little cases that look so minute and covert? They won't. And still I lost $1 million. My life will never be the same. And the other day I'm like, I want to reach out for help. Where can I get help for the harm I received? And there is no one to call. There is no one still 12 years later to call. My birthday was yesterday. 12 years ago, I did Yosemite. I did 60-mile breast cancer walk. I had all these plans for my next 10 years. Instead, I spent them healing from medical errors, one after another, after another, after another. So your system is failing us. There is not safe medical care in there's not always safe medical care in California. I have lost my life because of the errors in California. Anyways, it looks like I'm cutting out. I don't know, and I'm going to go, but I have to disagree with Ms. Lawson, and that's it.
Thank you for your public comment. I want to go back to Barbara Christensen. Barbara, see if you're back at your computer and able to come off of mute. Okay, so Barbara had typed in that she was a nurse and committed advocate from Ventura, California. She requests that the Medical Board of California join the California Association of Licensed Midwives and co-sponsoring legislation to create a licensed midwife board. So just wanted to make sure Barbara spent time typing that out. She got to get it out. And we'll go back to Maya. Maya's disconnected, it looks like. So also a California resident and midwifery consumer calling to ask the Medical Board of California to join CALM in authoring legislation for an independent midwifery board. And I'm going to try Rosie Arthur's daughter one more time. Rosie, see if you can unmute and if we can hear you this time.
Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to say before we get started, before you start counting my time, that it took me over 22 minutes to access this meeting, and none of the prompts were correct. So you have some real problems. It's not ADA compliant. A ditto for everything that Eric Andrews said. And each time we've had one of these meetings, the setup has been different. And there doesn't seem to be anybody actually reading the instructions or doing any beta testing regarding that. So that is something that's very, very important. The little hand is so small, it just looks like a period. I couldn't tell whether it was up or down, and it's not even on the screen. I have to go look for it. So you really need to make accessibility, whether a person's disabled or not, viable to this system. Now, and I do appreciate the folks from the Midwifery Council regarding the limited amount of time, so hopefully I can use a little of their time. I've been an advocate for patients and victims and clients, etc., and I've appeared before the medical board for more than 6 years, mostly regarding patients with chronic and intractable pain, legacy patients, patients with medical problems that require special attention to the prescriptions that they are given and access to medical care. And it's fallen on deaf ears. I've asked to be a part of the committees to look at it, and I am a medical professional, and I've not heard anything back. Now, I'm going to read something, and you're going to see why I'm so upset, and it may take me a little bit of time, but please forgive me. This was written 1 month ago today. It is not supposed to be this way, a child dying before a parent. The grandchildren should be fighting over grandma's teacup collection, not collecting their father's ashes. A 26-year-long fight with chronic, intractable pain. That's over half his life. He was 46. He accomplished much despite the challenge, unable to rest, unable to sleep, unable to ask for help, unable to accept help. Me do it myself. Always the Marine, Semper Fi. Still fighting the good fight, and full of hope one day and gone the next. Gone too soon, but he will live in our hearts forever. Hold close those whom you love. Appreciate each opportunity to reach out to others, to help, to share, to uplift, to carry. Set aside differences. Abide, forgive. Remember all the times, the good, the bad, the in-between times, and given time, they will all sort themselves out. and the good times will reign.
30
Rest
seconds
now, my
remain.
precious one. Rest now, my precious one. My son died because his access to his pain medication was limited by your death certificate project. Now I'm hoping that with his death, that maybe you can learn something about the
10
harm
seconds remain.
the harm that has been caused by your actions and this folly. You knew going into it that what.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Michelle Montserrat Ramos. Michelle, you should be seeing a request on your end to unmute your mic. Okay, Michelle, I don't see you receiving or unmuting on your side. A few more seconds.
John, could you try to send whatever request we have one more
Mi-
time to try to
Michelle,
catch?
Michelle just opened her line. Michelle,
Hi, can you hear me?
we can. Please go ahead.
I'm Michelle Montserrat Ramos. I'm the Kathy Olson patient advocate, and I am with Consumer Watchdog. I've spent the past 16 years of my life at these meetings because you are not protecting consumers. It started when my husband-to-be, Lloyd, died tragically at the hands of a substance abusing doctor. I brought forward everything that proved there was gross negligence involved, but my complaint was dismissed at the Central Complaint Unit. I've told you throughout the years that all you had to do was investigate my complaint and I would have gone away, but you didn't. So I'm still here. I have brought many other advocates and consumer groups along with me throughout the years. I have worked to change laws. This should not have been my job. This should be yours. If I am so committed to obtaining accountability, then you should be as well. The media is watching you because you are not doing your job. This is not just one brave person's opinion, but the opinion of many. All of you know that you can do better. We are here trying to help you do better. Thank you.
For your public comment, President Lawson, this time there are no additional requests in queue.
Sean, thank you, and thank you to the many members of the public who took time out of their days to come here and talk with all of us and share their points of view. We really do appreciate it. We're going to move on now to agenda item 3, which is approval of the meeting minutes from the August 19th through 20th, 2021 quarterly board meeting. Just a reminder, the minutes are, of course, a summary of the comments, a summary of the meeting received. Meeting that was held, excuse me, but the full recorded meeting is of course available on the board's website. Members, if you'd unmute your computers and let me know if there are any additions or corrections to the August board meeting minutes.
This is Lori. I have a few minor corrections.
Please. Go ahead.
Thank you. On page 7, where I spoke, I wanted to correct that. It says that I spoke to a complainant, but I want to correct that to say received correspondence from, to clarify. Also, 2 very minor things. On page 25, my name is spelled wrong. It says Luciano. And lastly, on page 51, on my comment, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lubiano. And did staff capture those comments? Excellent.
I did, thank you.
Any additional comments, changes or corrections to the minutes from board members?
This is Alejandra. I have one on page 40. I just want to clarify in the comments that I was in favor of this bill. I'd like to clarify I was in favor of the previous version of this bill. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional Additions or corrections to the August board meeting minutes?
Move approval.
Thank you. Did that come from Dr. Kraus? I apologize.
Jim Helzer, a second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the table, so I'll now ask the host to please call for public comments on the agenda item 3, approval of minutes from the August 19th to 20th, 2021 quarterly board meeting. Sean?
The Q&A window is open again for anyone who'd like to make a public comment in there. Please know it's not necessary to type in your public comment. You can just say, I'd like to make a public comment, or yes, or anything in that box, and we'll call on you in the order that we receive them. And also the hand raising function is available. For those on call-in lines, if you would like to raise your hand, please press *3 to raise your hand, and we will prompt you to unmute and make a public comment at that time. Okay, Ms. Lawson, give everyone a few more seconds here. Okay, this time I do not see any requests in the Q&A box or hands raised.
Thank you, Sean. I will bring it back to the board. Are there any other comments before I ask Ms. Caldwell to perform the roll call vote?
Just real quick, President Lawson.
Please.
Some bandwidth challenges today. So if my picture goes out, it's not me. I want to let you and the rest of the board members and the public know that.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. I appreciate knowing that.
Likewise, Madam Chair, myself, I got kicked off about 6 times and I kept on coming back on. So just letting you know.
Thank you. We continue
And
to all
me as
struggle
well.
with technology as a result of the pandemic. All right, any comments on the minutes before we move to the roll call vote? All right, Ms. Caldwell, please perform the roll call vote.
Can I please ask who made the motion?
I believe it's Dr. Kraus.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks.
Here.
Ms. Campaverde.
Aye.
Dr. Gonadev.
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins.
Yes.
Dr. Helzer.
Yes.
Dr. Kraus.
Yes.
Ms. Lawson.
Yes.
Ms. Lubiano.
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Dr. Thorpe.
Abstain.
Mr. Watkins.
Aye.
Dr. Yip.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. The August 19th through 20th board meeting minutes are approved. Members, please do remute your computers. We're going to move on to
Ms.
agenda.
Lawson?
Yes?
Can I make a comment real quick? I just wanted, because I know multiple members also pointed out, and with our board members pointing out that they're having connection problems too. There are rolling internet outages all through the West Coast right now. So it's about an hour before the meeting on, the entire medical board headquarter building lost internet as well too. So it's not a WebEx service issue necessarily. It's internet outages all around. Things seem to have stabilized for us here at headquarters, so hopefully it does for everyone else as well soon too.
Sean, thank you for that update. We'll move on to agenda item 4, which is just a brief president's report. I just have a couple of items to report on. Of course, since our last meeting in August, Dr. Hawkins and I continued to monitor and participate in the board sunset review process, which, as you all know, ultimately concluded in the adoption of SB 806, which reauthorized our board and included some changes to the regulatory scheme of which we are a part and in which we operate. We'll be talking more about some of the implementation, excuse me, tomorrow at our board meeting. I also worked very closely over the past couple of months with our colleagues at the Department of Consumer Affairs, also at the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency on a variety of matters of importance to the board. I wanted to point out to the board members, to the extent you're not aware, also to the members of the public, that our 2020-2021 annual report has been published and is available on the board's website, and it's full of a lot of helpful information about the board and its activities, both licensing, enforcement, and our other activities. And then lastly, I would like to express my gratitude again. I know we previously said goodbye to our colleague, Dr. Howard Kraus, but as a result of pandemic-related extensions, he has continued to join us as a board member. We thank you for your more than 8 years of service, and I think this is your last meeting. So Dr. Kraus, thank you.
Thank you. Happily and sadly, my last day is November 28th.
Before we move on, well, before I ask if there are any questions or comments and take public comment, I also just wanted to point out that for tomorrow morning's board meeting, this is just a matter of procedure. We will be opening the board meeting publicly, and then we have a closed session that's on the agenda. So the board will be going into closed session shortly after the beginning of the meeting. I know that sometimes that process can be frustrating or hard to understand for the public, but we will be going into that closed session for a personnel matter, which is the annual evaluation of the board's executive director. So just wanted to make those members of the public aware that that will be happening, and we won't be in open session until that closed session concludes, after which we'll start our regular meeting. So any comments or questions from members? All right, I'll open it up for public comment. Sean?
Thank you, President Lawson, and I'll point out too on the comment that you made too that while the meeting will open and then you guys will go off to closed session, we will have the open session meeting there for anyone wishing to wait for us to come back. So you're welcome to join the meeting at the start time, and then there will be a point where we'll be in closed session, but you can stay in the meeting until we return back to open session. So anyone wishing to make a public comment, the Q&A window is open again. Or you may raise your hand. For call-in users, you can raise your hand by pressing *6 on your phone. First up here, we have Eric Andrews. Eric, please answer the prompt on your side. Line's open, Eric. Please go ahead.
Just want to say, Sean mentioned that it's an internet outage problem all over. It's not. My internet has stayed completely solid the entire time. We have other computers in the house that are working. It's the WebEx software. My computer has crashed 4 times every time that I open WebEx. I don't know why you guys insist on using the software. Clearly, everybody's having problems. They had problems with it during panel B today. Why do you insist on using it? It's awful, awful software. Also, why in the world, Christina, would you put an open session or a closed session in the middle of a meeting and make the public wait? Why not just move it to the end of the meeting so we can all go and you guys can just do it at the end of the meeting? What difference does it make when you evaluate the executive director? Why would you make hundreds of people in the audience wait so you guys can do a closed session in the middle of a meeting? It's ludicrous. And finally, Government Code 54953.3 says a member of the public shall not be required as a condition to attendance at a meeting of a legislative body of a local agency to register his or her name, to provide other information, to complete a questionnaire, or otherwise to fulfill any condition precedent to his or her attendance at the meeting. You guys are requiring people to give their names in order to sign up to use the WebEx software at this meeting. That's illegal. Illegal. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. At this time, I do not see any additional requests or hands raised.
Thank you, Sean. We'll bring it back to the board. Any comments from board members before we move on to agenda item 5? Right, seeing none, we will move on to agenda item 5, which is board member communications with interested parties. Do any members have anything to report? And members, please do unmute your computers if you wish to speak. Dr. Hawkins.
Thank you. And Christina, thank you for your accurate and balanced comments at the beginning of this meeting. I'm a member of an FDA Food and Drug Administration Advisory Committee. Had the opportunity to participate in 2 committee meetings in the past 3 months. The first was evaluation of adenovirus vectors used in the treatment of gene therapy. And the second was the evaluation of booster therapy, which was recommended to the FDA for Moderna and J&J vaccines. I'm a consumer representative, and I appreciate the opportunity to be involved with the Food and Drug Administration.
Thank you. Any additional board members that have communications to report with interested parties? Mr. Watkins.
Yes, I have some disclosures to make. Yes, this is the elephant in the room. Yes, I spoke to investigative reporter Jim Axelrod from the CBS Morning News. Yes, I spoke to Melody Gutierrez from the LA Times. And yes, I did file a whistleblower complaint with the California State Auditor. This is not and here's the deal. I heard respectfully, Madam Chair, pointing out the reasons why I'm doing this. And the reason why I did this was because of comments that I've just heard. If we fail here, and failure means the outcome that we produce, that someone files a complaint, and there's a 1.2% chance that that complaint is going to result into probation, that's failure. And that's my only reason. I don't have ulterior motives. I don't need an ulterior motive. I saw it and I reported it to everybody. This has not been since yesterday, right? The reason why I did not. Okay, and that was the disclosure. My disclosures were, I spoke to Jimmy Axelrod, I spoke to Melody Gutierrez, and I spoke to the California State Auditor, and the decision for making that was that this board continues to tip the scales in favor of doctors. Nothing has changed. I've waited a year. I've got more data, and that's my disclosures. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Are there additional disclosures? I'll follow up. Of course, I routinely, in my capacity as the board's president, receive direct communications on a variety of matters, whether those be individual applications, people who reach out to me in help of resolving something. I forward all those communications, of course, onto staff for resolution. As I mentioned previously during my president's report, I interacted quite frequently over the past couple of months with representatives from the Department of Consumer Affairs and also from the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. And I did a number of media interviews as well, as we notified the board members of in advance. With that, any other board communications with interested parties that people have to report?
Madam Chair, I just want to make sure that I repeat this multiple times. I do meet local assembly people, local senators, and local board of supervisors. These are all people I know for the past 15, 20 years, and we do not bring up the medical board issues.
Thank you, Dr. Gananada.
I have one also. I received email communication request for a meeting from a patient advocate. The meeting has not taken place yet. And I also spoke to the CDC's Young Breast Cancer Survivor Program in out of my role as a patient advocate.
Thank you, Ms. Campaverde. Any additional communications before I ask the host to call for public comments? All right, Sean, if you could please open up for public comments.
Forgive me, let me interject that members of the public are free to use pseudonyms and fake email addresses. And I know that people are already doing that, but just to make it clear, you can use initials or fake names. You don't have to provide your real name. It just helps to make a clear record, but if you object to that, you're free to use a pseudonym.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. All right, Sean, if you could open up the public comment line, please.
Yes, the Q&A.
Item 5.
Q&A window is open for anyone who would like to make a public comment. Please feel free to type anything in there. For the call-in users, if you would like to make any sort of public comment, please press *3 to raise your hand and we'll call on you. And then anyone else in the WebEx application can raise your hand by pushing the raise hand button. First up, we have Eric Anders. Eric, you should be getting a prompt to unmute on your side. Your line's open, Eric. Please go ahead.
Sorry, Carrie Webb, you're wrong again. Let me read it again. A member of the public shall not be required as a condition to attend.
Mr. Andrus, this is
legislative.
comment.
Stop talking, Christina. Of a local agency to register his name or her name to provide other information that would be a pseudonym. I'm replying to Carrie's statement, Christina.
This is not the time to reply to Carrie's
Nor
statement.
was it a time for her to talk about it either. So I'm replying to her.
Please cut the line.
Next up, we have Rosie Arthur's daughter. Rosie, you should be getting the prompt on your end too.
And just a reminder, this is a public comment on board member communications with interested parties, agenda item 5.
Rosie, your line's open. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I've tried to join the last 2 agenda items, but apparently the line through the hand means it's up, not that it's down. And it took me a while to figure that out. I had made a request last year for a particular presentation, and the board actually took up and planned to do it, but it turned out to be something else. It was supposed to be on intractable pain, and that didn't happen. It ended up being an advertisement for mat therapy, medications that cost a patient generally starting at $1,300 a month.
Arthur's daughter, I need to keep this focused on board member communications with interested parties, which is our agenda item 5. Do you have a comment on that?
Yes, I was told at that time that I would be able to speak to you, Ms. Lawson, directly regarding the problems with the board staff facilitating the business. And all you did was take that communication and put it back to the same people who aren't facilitating and doing the job. I shouldn't have to wait 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years for an agenda item to come up and to actually be on that agenda item. So I still want to speak to you sometime. I'm not far away, but there are some very definite organizational problems that need to be taken care of because nothing gets done. All it does is go circle around, circle around, circle around. Okay, so if there's going to be a communication, there has to be communication. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Sandra Perez. Sandra, you should be receiving a prompt on your end to open your line.
Hi, good afternoon again. Sandra Perez, Hesperia, California. I was wondering if Ms. Jones was going to discuss our communications from patient safety advocates, especially concerning the failure of this board to require the medical students and or residents to register appropriately with the medical board under BPC 2065. That communication has been ongoing for several months, yet she has not spoken up.
So just for clarification, Ms. Perez, this is the time on our agenda where the board members disclose their communications.
She has had communications with me, Ms. Lawson.
Yeah, she's not a board member. She's one of our staff members. So she will be providing a report, I believe, coming up as part of a upcoming agenda item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I do not see any additional requests in queue.
Thank you. Any additional board member disclosures of communications with interested parties?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I did have someone request information, so I directed it to staff.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments before we move on to agenda item 6? All right, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is agenda item 6, executive management reports. Mr. Persifka, please.
Madam President, thank you very much. The 4 reports are with the board. I will attempt to offer a brief summary. First, starting with the administrative report. This has been another very particularly busy day, a busy period for the executive. Looking at the numbers of meetings that we have had, many with the president and the vice president, with the attorney general's office, the health quality investigative unit, particularly with those last 2 organizations, the contact in a real-time basis is really on a daily basis, and even at a strategic level is at a weekly basis. Staffing update. The board has successfully retained 8 new employees in the last period. I think this is a phenomenon that all frankly, bodies and agencies have been experiencing, is that during the time of COVID, there's been a lot of disruption to the workforce. And so we are very fortunate to have been able to hire 8 people during the last period. In terms of the budget update, there's the budget summary, which is attached, which demonstrates that there has been a marginal improvement in the operating conditions of the board, and the stated reserve has increased marginally. That's expected at the end of the current fiscal year. I don't need to repeat to the board that we're in perilous financial situation. A only partial fee increase has come online, but we are in a position of managing this very difficult situation. And a lot of that is done through operational efficiencies and other efficiencies that we have managed to achieve in what has been a very difficult operating environment. In terms of coronavirus update, the news from the point of view of staff here is that from the end of October, all unvaccinated staff have to undergo weekly testing. This is all coordinated by DCA. The testing is done at the DCA main headquarters, not here at 2005 Evergreen. I want to thank the staff for their cooperation in all of this. In terms of our external communications update, as the president reported, we have published the annual report. The annual report has lots of information in there about our licensing and enforcement, and I would recommend everyone to take a look at that. We operate in, again, very challenging times. One of the challenging times that we face is that because of closures of certain clinics, there have been a number of patients who require pain management who have, if you will, been thrown out into, searching for alternative care. With this in mind, and particularly with the issues of access for those requiring pain management, we issued guidelines, and this was all done obviously in consultation with the California Department of Public Health and with DCA. Myself and the Deputy Executive Director continue to address as many associations and conferences and groups of professionals as we can. We're able to do this by and large remotely at very little disruption or loss of time. I've always thought it's very important that staff get out and about, talk to professionals, talk to stakeholders, and so this is an important part of our function. There's a report there about the remote working update, and again, we continue to have sizable members of staff who are working remotely, and we'll continue with that certainly in the foreseeable future. Obviously, we're continually in consultation with the state, with DCA, with larger elements of dealing with the pandemic. But again, I want to pay tribute to the staff who have shown a lot of flexibility and agility in the current environment. The complaint tracking system, again, the board is very familiar with that. This remains a work in progress. It requires a redesign of the Breeze system, which becomes quite difficult. The other thing that I would like to point out is that we have gone forward with an initiative to print yourself pocket license cards, and we expect this to be launched by the end of the year and into next year. There's an update there on the Docs program, which continues to be a way to streamline our licensing processes. And we continue to seek improvements. We've been redesigning our complaints management form. The goal of these updates is to streamline the forms to collect as much relevant data and releases as possible in the early stages of the complaints process. And we've had WebEx training events for medical experts. The medical experts are really at the heart of our clinical cases. I really cannot emphasize their importance enough. We continue to work to improve the quality of our experts. We're always looking for new experts. And importantly, we have a lot of work to do to train our existing experts. And that's a very important part of our processes here. And I have to say that staff spend their weekends at training, which is again really above and beyond of duty. They spend their weekends assisting in the training of our experts. Moving on to the next report, which is on the enforcement program, I wanted to highlight some of the statistical information in relation to disciplinary actions at the end of last year. I know there was a question raised about the increase in the public, in the letters of reprimand, in the public reprimands and public letter of reprimands. It was noted that that increased year on year by 42%. And to put that in context, disciplinary actions and complaints in a given year are a direct reflection, by and large, of complaints that have been made in previous years, generally 2, 3, or sometimes earlier years. And so what has happened, particularly in the years 17, 18, 18, 19, and 19, 20, is there was increases in the numbers of complaints. And this has resulted in increased enforcement action and increased disciplinary action. Increases in complaints lead to increases in investigations, increases in referrals. And what we have seen in the most recent year, yes, there was an increase in the public letters of reprimand by 42%. There was also increase in the revocations by 40% and an increase in the surrenders by 30%. The one thing that we have examined very carefully is if there was any reasons for, again, a significant increase in the public letters of reprimand. Well, yes, there was, because there was increasing complaints, increasing levels of activity, and this is reflected as well in the increases in the numbers of revocations and in the numbers of surrenders. What simply is happening here is we have a number of cases that have been through the investigative process, have sort of reaching the end of their investigative cycle. And then the executive, by and large, has to decide, what are we going to do with these cases? And what we've been trying to do with the cases that fall into this category, we are talking largely about the less serious cases. We are cases that we do not believe from our current policy, which has not changed, does not rise to the level where there is a requirement for a probationary period. And also we have a problem which the board members can become very familiar with, is that at the end of an investigation, sometimes the results of the investigation, the expert reports, the quality of information, the availability and reliability of witnesses, we in some cases run into problems of what can we prove? What can we get out of these cases? So by and large, what we have been doing with the older cases, the cases which are ending their life as open investigation cases, working them, I think, more thoroughly, trying to find ways to use them. Now, the point of going with the public reprimand is that that is a way that we can get legally binding remediation. If the case is simply closed, we have no jurisdiction whatsoever. So working with the enforcement team, I can assure the members of the board that there's been no change in our policy. And overall, there is an increase in enforcement activity. And this includes more revocations, more surrenders, as well as increased use of the public reprimand. And we will be happy to answer any questions. The other thing that I would like to say is that it is simply the case that the years 1920 and 2021 have been difficult years. Because of COVID, there's been a lot of disruption. There's been disruption to the practice of medicine. There's been disruptions to the administrative law process. For a period of time, the administration law process was actually closed. There's been difficulties in terms of doing investigations. So it is those 2 years as a basis of making, significant judgments, I think there's a point of a bit of caution. And for example, if you look at the increase in public reprimands, going back just not year on year, but looking back 2 years, 3 years, they're very much in line. And the final thing that I have to say, and I have to emphasize, I can't emphasize this more, the way that the executive looks at these cases is we look at every case on the merits. As I tell staff, we don't get any points by issuing a revocation or by closing a case. We get points by managing and handling each case appropriately. If we get a case where on its face there is no claim, it behooves us to close that as efficiently as possible. If we get a very serious case, which raises very serious issues about fitness to practice, we must investigate it, in some case invest considerably in it, and see it all the way through, seeking the most appropriate penalty, which ultimately is revocation. And the other thing which I would say is that we do see an increase in the numbers of surrenders. Now, this is not by accident. A surrender is a means of us achieving the highest levels of public protection, sometimes in the shortest period of time. And one thing to keep in mind, there is a number of differences between surrenders and revocations. With a surrender, there is no appeal. It is final. So just to put all of that in context, but of course, I will be happy to answer any questions along these lines, and particularly with my colleagues here from the enforcement area. Moving on, there's an update there about the expert reviewer program in terms of the central complaints unit. The days to initiate a complaint are down to 5 days, which has shown a great deal of work. And then we have a number of updates in terms of the complaint investigation office, the discipline unit, the probation unit. I just want to very briefly go through some of the tables there. Well, we have complaints received, complaint initiation time frame. This is PM2. I mean, those numbers are down. Average days to complete complaints in the central complaint unit, those have been coming down. Average days to complete investigation in the complaint investigation office, that continues to rise. The rate of increase has been slowing down. As we indicated, the problem we had here is we received a lot of complaints in relation to vaccinations. This predates COVID. And in those kinds of complaints, we have to use the subpoena process to get the patient records. We continue to work those down. I want to make a little highlight of the chart, which we call the pending enforcement caseload summary. This is item 6B14. What the astute reader will notice is that if you look at the total number of complaints in the system and you compare that to where it was at the time of the last report, we find that this number is up by 3%. Previously, it had come down every time. Well, as I hope I tried to emphasize at the last time, there is no basis for expecting that number will always decrease, because I can guarantee you we will always have complaints, and that will always be our primary focus of business. But particularly what we have seen in the last period is that the number of very new complaints that are coming into the central complaints unit is now up. And that increase of those newest complaints is really dwarfing our ability to resolve older complaints. Needless to say, we have to look at these numbers very carefully. For me, the critical issue is going to be for us to manage the aging profile, to ensure that we don't have a backlog of older cases. and to then deal with these newer cases as efficiently and as effectively as we possibly can. But as the return of medicine returns to normal, as we have more incidences requiring care, it is naturally expected that the complaints will increase. And so this will put strains on us. Having been able to successfully manage the numbers of complaints, it gives me some confidence that we have sufficient capacity in the system. But again, this is a matter that requires continuous monitoring, continuous examination, and we have to continually ask the question, are we using our scarce resources as effectively and efficiently as possible? And we will continue to try to do that. Now, very briefly going on to the third report, which is the licensing program summary. Again, as outlined there, the board received a continuous volume of postgraduate training license and physician and surgeon's license applications during this very busy part of the year. Our initial review period remains at 30 days, very much in line with the guidelines. Senate Bill 806 will be very challenging because it requires a number of changes to our licensing processes, but we have invested a lot in preparing for those challenges. We have a small update in relation to the Mexico pilot project. We said there we have issued 2 licenses under the Mexican pilot project to date. Since the date of this report, I understand a 3rd license has been issued, but we are awaiting to get the go-ahead from the other applicants to process their licenses. You see an update there in relation to the COVID-19 waivers. And again, some information on the Consumer Information Unit. Moving on to the 4th item, which is the update on the strategic plan. That will be given to you by my very able colleague, Mr. Varghese.
Thank you, Bill. So this agenda item for 2022-2024 strategic plan update, traditionally the board was provided with this report during the November quarterly board meeting, but this is to update that this particular strategic plan update for this new plan will be delayed. And the primary reason is that the external stakeholder survey alone yielded 5,061 responses, which is like 957% increase from the previous 2017 scan, which received like only 479. So there's no action at this time that the board need to take. This is simply a report that this will be delayed, and to your material, a new schedule is attached that will give you a landscape when the final report will be ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pasifka and Mr. Varghese. I just have one question regarding the strategic planning and the increase, very significant increase in the number of inputs. Did we or did DCA go out to a broader audience, or is there something that's responsible for that very significant increase?
Yes, I do have some numbers to share with you, Ms. Lawson. Out of the outreach effort of the board by emailing our licensees and all the public medias and social medias that we prompted, over 94% of the responses did come from the MBC licensees themselves. So that's the major chunk of it. About 4,785 responses were received from MBC licensees, and the rest belongs to public members, consumer organization representatives, schools and college representatives, professional association representatives, credentialing organizations, governmental entities, and outside that are outside MBC, other state agencies, basically.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from members regarding the executive management reports? Ms. Lubiano.
Thank you. Since we've been talking about building trust and how transparency is important to us and the public, we've talked about in previous meetings getting the notification system up. And I know, Bill, you had mentioned in our last meeting that we were looking at how we could perhaps use Breeze to incorporate that feature. And so again, I'd ask that you'd elaborate on that a bit more, and also maybe comment if that's not working, can we look elsewhere? Maybe a new system instead of using ours, so that we could get that up and running as soon as possible. I know that's top of mind to many people, and a quick way that we can help improve communication.
Okay, I know
Thank
Mr.
you.
Varghese has been looking at the. You're talking about the complaint tracking system here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and
Yes, Ms.
notification. Yes.
Yes, Ms. Liviana. We have made considerable progress towards that project. And at this time, yes, we do have to go through the state system. Breeze is what we have to go through, and the DCA approval and the legal review of it. I want to say we are further into it right now than what we were before. So we are on the right path. It's just have that being part of this structure that we have to go through, because we are not independent autonomous body. We are under the umbrella of DCA and the others, and the state IT CIO's review must be completed before we can go public. So since we are kind of under this umbrella, we have to go through that structure. We don't have the luxury to go outside on our own.
I see. And in terms of timeline, what we, the public, can expect to see something, perhaps?
I don't have a definite answer now, but I can come back with that information later and share with the board.
Ms. Liviana, maybe I can interject
Mhm.
with Reggie here too. This is Sean from MedBoard. So we're currently working on the infrastructure for the web services in order to pull that data out of Breeze. It wouldn't make sense to do it in a system other than Breeze either, because complainants are entering their data into Breeze. And what Reggie's speaking of, we have to use Breeze because that's the Department of Consumer Affairs, system that all the boards under the Department of Consumer Affairs are supposed to be using. So we're working on the infrastructure to pull the data that we want to make available out of that system. That is a new effort that hasn't ever been done with enforcement data. We do it with license data, for the license lookup system on the one side. So it's hard to give you a definitive date because we're looking at possibly having to hire a contractor to assist on the DCA side to get those services in place. Right now, we're doing is kind of a proof of concept. So all we can say at this time is that work is being done. There's not a formal project plan yet, so I don't have a timeline I can give to you, but it's actively being worked on.
Also,
Thank you.
to add to that, can we create, I've been sifting through a lot of this data over the past few months and looking at some of these reports. The way the data is currently aggregated makes it really difficult to come out with accurate numbers and accurate depiction of what's actually happening. I've done some statistical analysis myself. I even hired an expert statistician to help me figure out all the different independent variables that go into bringing out some of these numbers. The numbers that I am seeing are not the numbers that are being reported in the news by far. It's completely off. I understand how someone can look at a number and not quite understand the background behind it. It'd be great if we had a system that was able to tell us what the recidivism rate is. Great, we had a system to tell us, how long a complaint takes. And I don't know if that's a custom database or it's something that we can, do through DCA. So that
Mr. Brooks, on the recidivism report, we do have some progress on that. It was a new initiative that we had to make sure that we lay the foundation correctly, that we encompass everything that we can and do not leave anything out, that later it becomes an issue that someone else can point out that that is not correct. So with that, we started out with defining what recidivism really is and how we should calculate that, what's the formula for that. So we do have a preliminary definition already structured, which would look into all the probation, not just someone who was on probation and then they were off probation for a little bit and then had to put back on probation. That is very narrow definition of recidivism, but we want to look at everything, including someone violated the probation while they are on probation, and also someone was put on probation and they were never had to come back on probation or any type of board action. So we do have a formula already defined, and so that will be presented to the board and for your review and approval. At the same time, another challenge we ran into is, which you kind of pointed out, that in the past 25 years in the board's history, the board migrated its data twice from one computer system to the other and changed business processes for how discipline is tracked in the system as well. So doing all that, with all that information, trying to aggregate the data that was not accurately migrated to be directly comparable will take significant amount of time to manually review. So there are several examples, and we need to make sure we build the base data to be accurate. Otherwise, we'll be comparing apples to oranges and reporting wrong information. So these were the challenges, and we are making progress on that. But limiting the number of years to look at the recidivism report to 10 years will help, but it'll still take considerable amount of time. And I'm glad that you noted the struggle and how extremely difficult it is to manage the data that we are presented with.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, someone who's, loves numbers and, was the person who volunteered to help teach it in college, and love kind of going through these exercises. And I see that for multiple reasons. We're here about consumer safety and consumer protection. If we don't have accurate information, we can't measure our success, right? I mean, I would like to know what percentage of doctors are disciplined because of DUIs. If that's higher than a malpractice or some other type of suit, we can focus on that to help reduce those numbers. But if the numbers that we're looking at, right now don't tell us that story, it's tough to, bring that conclusion to help protect consumer. So I'm hoping we'll get to that point. I know it's going to take some time.
And Mr. Brooks, I'll point out in your the enforcement board packet 6B, pages 7, 8, 9, 10. I won't go on, but they all have metrics of the days it takes to do certain things. So we all are able to track the number of days it takes to complete a complaint, those kinds of things too. So if you have any questions about that, I urge you to reach out to the executive, staff, and we can try to answer any questions you may have.
One question I have for staff, just along these lines of what Ms. Luviano and Mr. Brooks are talking about, are there any tools that staff needs from the board? Do you need us to send a letter or to author, to send a letter on behalf of the board to DCA or to agency, speaking about how high of a priority this is for our board? Is there anything else we can do to help staff in its work, recognizing that we are part of the state of California government, right? Recognizing that we're operating within a system where we're not independent and we can't stand something up on our own. Is there anything that we could do as the board to be helpful to staff?
Well, certainly, Madam President, I can assure you that at any time we felt that's necessary, we would reach out to you. As you know, we're in practically daily communication with you about a host of things. And we know that you have been in touch with DCA, with agency, with the governor's office about a host of matters. So we would never hesitate to use your good offices.
Great, thank you. Additional, Mr. Watkins.
Yes. First, I would love to see Mr. Brooks' statistics where the claims are made that what was in the media was false or inaccurate. So I want to, I want to be real fair, because Bill, I think I owe you somewhat of an apology because I was too hot at the last board meeting talking about the public reprimands. It ended up that we did write the highest number of public reprimands, but that's besides the point. I'm looking forward. I've got an alternative view, because we can only rely on the data that the board produces. So the annual reports give us a kind of a complete picture, oversight at a great level of the inputs, which is complaints. It goes through the system, and at the end of the system, a result is achieved. I'm looking at those results, and those results show that I put the, I don't know if anybody bothered to look at that sheet that I have for the last 13 years. This is all the board's document, all the board's numbers. And so if you say you cannot place reliance on these numbers, then other experts from other agencies can definitely look at it. But I want to point you to, where we talk about that there was an anomaly in this year. Over a 13-year period, this was not an anomaly, and that's why I apologize to Bill, is that because our average rate, the percentage of public reprimands that we ultimately wrote in this period was 1.5%. It was high, but the average was only 1.3% for the 13 years. So it's not out of the range. The next point that I'm trying to make on point B was that the percentage cases that we decided with probation, ultimately that after it goes through the whole system, remain standard, remain the same for the last year and this year. However, there was more complaints being filed there was more less complaints this year, but more complaints was moved to the Attorney General's office. So we're still getting the same result, but that is 0.2% lower than the 1.4 that we were averaging over the last period. The rest of the numbers all check out. That's how I verify these numbers. The point that I'm trying to make is that when you look at something strategically, you have the benefit of seeing what was put in the system and what comes out of the system. And what comes out of the system is the end product. And what I've been asserting, and probably not communicating very well, was that those numbers are way, way too low. And that when you see those increases in that everything else remains the same, but the public reprimand level goes up, then it is it's a reasonable question to ask. There's some issues here. So you don't want to just jump to conclusions, and that's what I did. But the point that I'm trying to make is, there are real issues right up and down the enforcement channel. Now, when I talk to the board, nobody else seems to think that way. All the public advocates think that way. Everybody else thinks that way. But we know that there are genuinely expert issues. Bo mentioned it. I took a sample of 100 cases, and I found that we wrote like 40%, 38% of those 100 cases was public reprimand. I looked through what was the cases, the causes, and like 40% of the public reprimands was related to expert issues. That's a serious issue. So that's a serious issue that we have to address. That's where these numbers that I'm talking about could be improved. And I mean, this is what we need to focus on. I'm not here to attack anybody. I don't think I've attacked anybody. Bill should feel like I attacked him in the last one, but I've not attacked any person. I've been very, very specific and conscious about not doing that, because I still believe that this board, we have the responsibility to make this board better. And so that's all I want to say. The numbers are just showing that we're doing the same thing. That's in essence. Same year, same thing. So that's my comment.
Mr. Watkins, thank you for your comments. And I did have an opportunity to take a look at the chart that you sent us earlier this morning. And then I think this speaks to what Ms. Lubiano and Mr. Brooks and others of us have talked about in terms of having the right data streams and making sure we're looking at all the information. Because, I'd like to understand from you, for example, why the chart you sent to us doesn't include surrenders, right? I mean, those were included in the annual report, but your chart doesn't include surrenders, for example. And so it's hard to understand what the impact of that would have been on the data if we looked at that.
Well, the impact of that on the data, why I didn't include surrenders as an example, was that surrenders doesn't really touch the board members. We do not make a decision on surrenders. The board, staff, and executive make that decision about what the surrender is. We never see a surrender. I wanted to stay focused with these numbers about decisions that we make as a body. And we decide on probation periods. We decide whether we follow the guidelines or we don't follow the guidelines. We decide on public reprimands and what other elements are present in those reprimands. I'm encouraged on the board, to be honest with you. On our new panel, I've seen things that I haven't seen on the new panel, a communication, a way of resolving things. Even that, I know that the issues are deeper when it's an expert issue, but we can't move beyond that. I'm not unreasonable. I have seen my fellow doctors on that panel but stretch a hand and wanting to do amazing work. So some you know, but that's what my new experience on the board. That's not my previous experience on the board. And I want to be fair, because if I'm asking this of the board and I'm starting to feel unfair, to be unfair in how I speak and the things that I do, I'll correct myself. Even Dr. Kraus was correct. He was correct in saying the stuff that he did at the last board meeting. And I took that to heart. I took it to heart from the point of view that we all genuinely want the same thing. I don't want to get that. It's difficult to understand me, but I genuinely want the board to be better. We are the only agency, ultimately, that people can come to and say, hey, something happened to me. And according to us, we're doing, a reasonably good job. I think we can do better. That's what this is about, that we can do better. And I'm open to taking advice. I'm open to having these conversations in an open forum, because that's what it's about. But I don't want to take up more time.
Thank you. And I agree with you. We're in agreement on the point that we can do better and we should always be looking for opportunities to improve, but we have to be working with the right data. And what I heard you just say was the data you were working with is limited to only those matters that the board members themselves see. And you're correct. We don't see those surrenders, right? But the data does show that surrenders have increased as well in the last year. And frankly, that's perhaps the most significant form of enforcement, right? Where the physician is being investigated and actually gives up their license and is no longer practicing medicine in California again. And our board staff does excellent work to achieve that type of result before it would ever get to us, before it would go through the lengthy process that we have. And so I think those things are important for the public to understand, because we aren't a one-size-fits-all process. Not every complaint goes start to finish through the board, through the administrative law judge, through a proposed decision. But there's a variety of work underway at any given time on behalf of consumers, on behalf of the public. And like I mentioned at the outset of the meeting, these processes aren't perfect. Let's all look for opportunities to improve. We're going to talk tomorrow at our meeting about what our legislative asks are going to be. Because as we all know, we asked for a lot of things in our sunset process this year, and we didn't get a lot of them, and including the resources, the financial resources we need to make sure we can do this good work. Deb, I saw your hand go up a moment ago.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. So yesterday, I spent 8 hours on the panel A meeting, and TJ knows, TJ is on panel A. I just want everybody to know that I think almost all the decisions we agreed on, which were put on hold. So there is no, it's not that one person is trying to do something and the others are not interested in patient protection. I don't agree with that. I think if we can get better, I'm okay with it. But the goal should be carefully review and see what fits in where we can get things done. With that comment, but I have a question for Bill and Reggie. That is, we talked about replying to people when they made a complaint. Where are we? Are we actually informing people what's going on with the complaints? If we close them, if it is under investigation, you don't need details. I'm just curious because I hear it all the time that they don't know, they made a complaint and they don't know what happened.
Thank you very much. The question is, where are we in terms of notifying complainants about the process of their complaints?
That's correct.
And Ms. Jones has been, and her team have been looking at that and have been doing work on that.
Okay. So is Ms. Jones going to report?
Yes, she's here. She's here.
Oh, okay.
Good morning, or good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members. Yes, we are conducting a monthly review of files coming out of CCU to assure that the letters are being sent. We are working through some backlogs in the closure letters, but other than that, we're going in and doing a random audit, if you'd like to call it that, on a monthly basis to review the files, because as we did for TJ several months ago, we have been trying to track and make sure that we're following the letters that we say we're going to send.
Okay, anytime you get a patient health, quality of care complaints, like what I get as the chair of surgery of any of my surgeons, first thing we do is acknowledge, and then we'll investigate, and when we finish, we'll send something. That's all I'm looking for, so that people don't feel that medical board is putting them in some empty drawer and ignoring them. That's what concerns me whenever people talk about it, that they got nothing. They sent 4 complaints and they got nothing.
Is there a board policy around this, or have we looked at what other boards are doing? One of the things we've heard, and during the public comments are, we filed a complaint and we haven't heard anything back from the board. What's our policy around that?
Madam Chairman, board members, we are sending letters. I have noted during the public comment that people are indicating they're not. I'm going to go back personally and follow up on those. That's quite concerning, but of course I also don't know the time frame, and I just need to go back and check. I know currently we've had multiple communications with staff that these need to be done, and that's why we're doing the random audit to follow up. But again, several months ago, as the initial review provided, we were not hitting the mark, and that's why we've changed the process.
Additional questions or comments from members before I go to the public comment? Mr. Rue?
Madam Chair, yeah, just a quick clarification. So I think one of the callers, previous board member asked if we have a routine response. So if someone makes any complaint, we do have a routine response that acknowledges receipt, right?
There is an acknowledgement letter that should be going out. And as I've stated,
Yes.
I've noted that and I will follow up on it.
Thank you.
Ms. Campaverde?
Another critical part of this that I want to follow up about, and I hate to be a squeaky wheel, but is the criteria used to close cases and how and why they were closed. That regular reporting on that data would be very helpful for us and would be very helpful information also for the public to understand the process, because that's also something we hear a lot, which is nothing. I submitted a complaint and it was closed and I don't understand, it was something that was legitimate. And so I think that that's a critical part of this, as well as the enforcement, because there are so many cases that are closed.
Yes, Ms. Campavari, thank you very much for that question. In the annual report, which has just been released, we have, the executive has gone to a lot of work to put a lot more detail into the reasons why we are closing complaints and to what categories that they fit in. And a significant portion of them fit in because we have to close them by operation of law. And again, maybe Jenna, if you could fill in some of the details on that.
I think if I could just add, because I think this is an important issue, perhaps this is worthy of an agenda item at our next board meeting that actually goes through that data, because
Yeah.
you noted, Mr. Pasifka, it is in our latest annual report, but I think it would be helpful to step through, in an educational session, the reasons why complaints are closed.
Absolutely, we can do that, of course.
Thank
Are
you.
there questions or comments before we go to public comment? Mr. Pasifka, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, if I could just make a couple of very brief points, particularly in relation to Mr. Brooks and Mr. Watkins. Can I say very sincerely, the executive exists to serve and do the work of the board. So anything that we can do to give you better information, we will be delighted to do. Now, people who have been at board meetings for at least as long as I have been here would know that we have been trying to improve the quality of the information, that we have some enforcement reports which have never existed before, but we are fully dedicated to giving the best information, to breaking it down in the most usable way, whether it's by type of complaint, whether it's in relation to timelines, in relations to outcomes. Even some of the most recent changes that we've made to the reporting patterns have been at the suggestion of board members. And I can assure any board member, if they have any suggestion for us, the executive here would be only too delighted to meet with you and to see what we can do. We're dedicated to improving the information. So just to make that point.
Thank you very much. And I just want to be really clear. I mean, I'm about data driving solutions, especially when this is about, quality of care, protecting the public. The more accurate data we have, the better we can do our job. And I think this is a good beginning. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments before I open it up for comment? All right, Sean, if you could go to the public line, please.
Okay, the Q&A window is open, and if anyone would like to raise their hand. Excuse me. First up, we have Karen Baker. Karen, you should be receiving a prompt right now. Karen Baker, your line is, you're being requested to open your line on your end. Prompt on your computer. Let's go to Marion Hollingsworth. Marion, let me open your line. Marion, you should be getting the prompt as well.
Okay, does that work?
Yes, your line's open. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you. Hello, my name is Marion Hollingsworth, patient safety advocate. I have to disagree with Mr. Pasifka that reprimands are usually the result of less egregious cases. There have been a number of cases in recent years involving deaths that have resulted in the doctor just getting a reprimand. The board is especially lenient with childbirth deaths and egregious harm. This includes a mother who literally bled to death 5 hours after her C-section at a Kaiser hospital, a VBAC death of a baby, and other baby harms and deaths that were largely preventable. In the VBAC death, your documents show that this doctor ignored the clear warning signs that the baby was in trouble, yet who gave her a reprimand. I have a list of childbirth cases that were just given reprimands, and I can give any board members names of the doctors involved, if that's what the data you mentioned that you would like. I don't understand the logic in thinking that a death is not an egregious case and therefore only warrants a reprimand. I don't understand the logic that the board thinks it's acceptable for a doctor to have a free death or two, so to speak, before they are considered dangerous. There's a doctor in Northern California who had 4 deaths in one discipline and kept his license. He did get a lenient discipline of 3 years probation, so you did save his career. But what if that dead patient was your child or your parent? Would you feel differently? Getting back to reprimands, you have to stop using reprimands for what you call first-time offenders, like the DUI case I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, where you basically went to bat for this doctor with a 0.28 BAC. Law enforcement would not give a doctor one free bank robbery or one free carjacking just because he's a doctor. Why do you consider a preventable death irrelevant when compared to a doctor's career? Get your priorities in order and start protecting the public. Don't use reprimands for death cases. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Susan Lauren. Susan, let me open your line. Okay, Susan, you should be seeing the request on your end.
Hello.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I agree with what Marion said, and also death isn't the only egregious thing. Severe bodily harm is also, and having to live like this is a living hell, as I've let you know many times. And there are many people living in these kinds of conditions. And the surgeon who assaulted me got nothing. And there continues to be people online that are complaining about their quality of life being ruined by him and by the doctors also that cover up for him. So every time I listen to this, it's not truthful at all what you're saying. It's not truthful. There was no mitigating circumstances. There's no reason for him to have stabbed me into my iliotibial bands, into my hamstrings, into my butt 8 times, into my kneecaps, into my waist. No reason at all, none. There's no medical reason for it. And for any of you that sit there and don't do anything about it, that think that you can just be passive about it, you're part of the problem. I'm not meaning to come down on you, but it's not just me. And I agree with the woman that said just one child, how offensive. And it's not just that you're negating my life, but I'm standing up, as you know, for thousands and thousands of people, mostly women, but men too, and each of their lives matters. And now in the public, there's several well-known people that are coming out with what I've been talking about for 10 years. The other thing is when you do go to the legislators and ask for change, you can see how people are dying and being harmed by the plastic surgeons and those that do the plastic or cosmetic surgery. I'm asking, as I've asked consistently, for legislation to remedy this, and I can help with that. I have given you detailed ways to change liposuction code 1356.6. And unless we do something, then every quarter we're going to see more and more people killed and harmed, and that is just unacceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable, and I don't see how that you can just let that go by and act like it's nothing. Thank you for your time. Please do something, and I want to see some legislation.
30 seconds remain.
I want to see some legislation on this, because someone could have done this before me and before all these other women that have been harmed, and men who have been harmed since me. So it's just way past time. And, you know, instead of talking about trauma training and, you know, how good you're doing, yeah, just do something. Okay, let's do something. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Michelle Montserrat Ramos. Michelle, let me send you a request here. Okay, Michelle, you should be seeing that request on your end. Please go ahead.
I am Michelle Montserrat Ramos, and I'm with Consumer Watchdog. When I speak, I represent hundreds of Californians, and specifically about 70 members of my volunteer advocacy team. I've started my own survey amongst my team, and I'm discovering that the majority of my advocates have not received letters throughout the complaint process. A few may have received one letter. Many have called your offices and tried to talk to staff and were just passed around from person to person. The bottom line is that board staff is not sending these letters out to families or complainants. I'm gathering this data to prove this. This is one of the many reasons why the families are so upset. You need to understand that you are not dealing with just a control number. You are dealing with the loss or lifelong harm of a person that was loved and cherished. We need to fix this issue and get the notification system up and going because your staff is not responsive, and we need to fix whatever the issue is with sending out these letters to families. I won't even begin to discuss how few of these families actually received any sort of accountability from their consumer complaints. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Virginia Farr. Virginia, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone here. It's like, see if I can refresh this. Okay, Virginia, you should be seeing a request to unmute your microphone from your side. Please go ahead.
About how you're supposed to get proper evidence when the medical records are false. Like 99.9% of my medical records are false. You can't tell my medical history through my medical records. Doctors refuse to write the proper medical records. And people like me who happen to go to the board, my thing would be closed immediately because it looked like nothing happened to me, which is 100% false. So you want all this evidence, but we keep on saying you can't get evidence because of the medical records for several years now, and this has never been an agenda item. So please address the false records so you can get evidence so you can appropriately discipline the doctors. And I had another comment, but I don't even know what it is now. And I agree with Susan and everybody else who spoke. And just one baby or just one mother or just one whoever, their life will never be the same. Never be the same. And we need to start with prevention. That's what it was. We need to work on prevention. We have money, $1 million for butterflies, $1 billion to pick up trash, $1 million lotteries for vaccines, and we have no money to do prevention and medical harm. Why is that? Who has wrote a letter to the governor saying we are in a medical crisis, we need money to fix this, we need to stop looking away and fix it? Who has wrote this letter to the governor? Who will write this letter to the governor? We're in a crisis. It's not working. It needs to be fixed. We need money to fix it. If you have $1 million for monarch butterflies, you need $1 million to help those harmed by medical errors. I would like every one of you to write the governor this week and tell him we need money to fix this. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Excuse me. Next up, we have Eric Andrus. Eric, you should see the request on your end. Please go ahead.
Thank God the law allows me to not be as politically correct as all of you. First of all, Bill, we're not numbers and percentages. We are human beings that have been harmed by incompetent doctors. As Marion said, what other professions would allow their members to get away with murder like the medical board does? Literally. Virginia makes a good point. How many of you are writing to the governor with your concerns when you hear from the patient advocates every single meeting? Are any of you contacting the legislators and the governor, or are you just sitting on your hands? It's a good question, though, isn't it? Christina, surrenders put dangerous doctors out of the business of harming patients, while reprimands allow them to keep harming patients. That's the difference. We're more concerned about the reprimands because it's letting bad doctors off the hook. They think, well, the medical board is weak. We're just going to get a slap on the hand, so who cares? Plus, they disappear after 10 years. Curtis Thompson told you earlier about his doctor that he filed a complaint against, telling him that the board is weak and won't do anything to her. And that's not untrue. You all allowed the doctor that screwed up my surgery twice to get away with it. Wouldn't even investigate my complaint, even though I had evidence from the surgeon who corrected her mistakes. Jenna, what's going on with Curtis Thompson's complaint? Filed almost 3 years ago now with no activity in 21 months. The enforcement department has gotten worse since you came on board. Alejandra, they use a catch-all phrase to close cases of it, and the quote, they say, didn't violate the standard of care. That way they can just say they followed the law. You can lump anything under that phrase, and then they're following the law. So in my case, the doctor screwed up my hernia surgery twice, leaving me with ongoing medical problems that I didn't have before the surgery. But the expert that weighed in on my case felt that that was within the standard of care and recommended closing my case. The staff just obliged. Bill, I'm beginning to wonder if you're bright enough to hold this position. What a bunch of hoo-ha propaganda. The Irish may have bought your baloney, but here in the US, we're not buying it. If any board member is falling for that, you're behind the hope. It didn't take you long to become a company man, and you're even working for CMA agencies now. So people that don't agree with your idiotic interpretations, they now are non-astute readers, huh? Thanks for disparaging everyone that doesn't agree with you. Let's look at real quickly at the years 16, 17, 17, 18, and 18, 19. There were 9,619 complaints. 87 of those were reprimands. The very next year, it shot up 45.24%. The very next year, 47.23%. This is pre-COVID, Bill. The public reprimands are going up exponentially.
10 seconds remain.
You can try to hogwash us with all your googog talk, but it's not working.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we're going back to Karen Baker. Karen, are you there? Can you see the request to unmute on your end? Okay, gonna move ahead to Rosie Arthurstetter. Rosie, you should be seeing the request on your end.
Okay.
Line's open, please go ahead.
I'll try to be quick. First thing I want to say is item 6A, page 4, regarding ADA and the wonderful input you've had about how great it is and it's the best you've ever had it. That's fictional. They don't respond to complaints when there's an issue, and obviously it's still not compliant. So that's just so much nonsense. Fictitious records. Since the opening, allowing opening of these medical records, it reveals a huge problem. Now, it's in the pain area particularly, but it can be in any area. And what has happened is during the time that these records were secret, doctors just made up stuff in their records, copied and pasted. I had to request 11 and a half years of records for a patient, which means that's about 200 records. All of them are about 14 pages long. None of them can be searched together in a group. You have to individually go into each one. It'll say, I said this to the patient. Doesn't say who I is, doesn't say what date. Test results aren't accurate. They don't have the date of it. They don't have the actual results. They have back office people making up things. They have IT people saying that they performed a psychological test on this day with this patient. It's an IT person who's not qualified to do it. They have chiropractors who are saying that they examined a patient in Southern California when they live in Northern California. They bill for tests that they didn't do over and over and over again. And they found these codes and they communicate these codes within their little guilds so they know how to rip off Medicare, Medi-Cal, whomever. And the patient doesn't get treated at all. People get referred and referred, but they never get treated. This is what happens, and they have all these false reports. So yes, when you get a report, you're not going to see what actually happened. I have a patient who had a heart attack in September of 2017. This year was the first year in May that they finally acknowledged he had a heart attack. They had not acknowledged it any of this time.
30 seconds remain.
A nurse practitioner whose license was pulled for elder abuse was allowed to treat a patient and taper his medication when it said do not taper. These types of things are happening. And you've got to look at the practices, not the individual doctors. Look at the practices, and you'll find that they are wasting billions of dollars. And you've got people who are not even medically
10
trained,
seconds remain.
causing all this damage. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Shonda Wesley. Shonda, let me open your line. Should be seeing the request on your end now. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I've worked in politics for nearly 30 years now, and listening to these very angry, passionate patients really is just heartbreaking. And it reminds me of how I felt in the fall of 2015 when I was harmed by a system multiple times by different doctors. One of the reasons my case didn't go forward is because no one doctor made more than one mistake, but many mistakes were made. I wanted to echo the concern about notifying and listening to patients because I filed a case or filed a complaint November 18th of February 13th of 2018. My case was closed on November 18th, 2018. I'd like to tell you when I got a letter. I got a letter June 30th of this year, of 2021. I never received a letter when my case was closed. So there is a problem in the system here and it needs to be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Jeff Rizzo. Jeff, you should be getting a request on your end.
Can you hear me?
We can. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Christina, you're getting a little big for your britches. You know, the advocates very easily put you in your position, in this position, and they can just as easily work to have you removed from the job if you don't stop trying to silence us. Our community voice is getting stronger by the day. Thanks.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have, Sandra Perez. Sandra, you should be getting the request on your side.
Yes, good afternoon. Sandra Perez from Hesperia, California. I'm a patient safety advocate with the Fairness Act. And first I wanted to touch on Ms. Lubiano's comment about the need for a possible new system and the further responses of, well, this is what we use. In business, we don't just use what we have because that's simply what we're used to. We use a system that actually works for the people. Clear and example of problems with the system is no better defined than EDD. Maybe this board should take notice. Further on the complaint process and the enforcement, this board does not enforce complaints at all whatsoever. I had a complaint closed simply because, oh, she's a resident. There's nothing we can do. It's outside of our jurisdiction, which is actually not true according to the medical board website. I've also had a complaint closed because, oh, he's just a medical student. But that's not true either, according to statements made by Ms. Jones in previous communications with the board members. He was supposed to be registered with the medical board according to BPC 2065. When I inquired under the Public Records Act for that registration document, it conveniently didn't exist, which means not only does this board not enforce the law and the statutes provided for registration, you guys don't even keep the documents if they were even submitted. So further, I don't understand how you guys move forward with investigations when, like was stated, they're false medical records, or in my case, the facility is saying none of the records actually exist. So how do you investigate any complaints I filed? But that's right, your position is it's only one child that died. Remember, her name is Jordan. She's not just one child. Her name is Jordan. Remember that. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. I want to try Karen Baker one more time. Karen, if you're seeing the prompt on your screen, you go ahead and press that to unmute your microphone. Okay, this time, President Lawson, I'm not seeing any additional requests.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I'll bring it back to the board. Are there any additional comments, questions before we move on to the next agenda item? Right, it does, in listening to the conversation, it does occur to me that perhaps there's an opportunity for a task force of this board to be put together to work on data stream and to figure out what the right process is, and to have us do some work offline. So I may talk to our council offline about whether that's something we could talk about tomorrow, or whether that's something that would need to be on our next agenda in February. But I think it's worth us considering that. All right, we will move on to the next item, which is item 7, enforcement updates. Ms. Castro and Ms. Nichols, please.
Give me just a moment here. I know that we have 2 from the Department of Justice, I believe. Let me put Matt. Matt, you're now with us, and let me see. I know Gloria was here a minute ago too. Yeah, so Matt and Gloria are here with us from the Department of Justice. Ms. Castro, Mr. Davis.
Yes. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Fantastic. So I have a brief update today, and of most relevance, given the discussion of statistics and data streams. Business and Professions Code Section 312.2 was legislated about 5 years ago, and it requires the Attorney General's office to publish data on accusations prosecuted for the Department of Consumer Affairs. And this would be for all 32 clients that our office handles, and it includes this board, the medical board. The next report will be the 5th annual report, and it will be published on January 1st, 2022 at oag.ca.gov. As for a staffing update, we recently appointed a new supervising deputy attorney general following a retirement. The name of our new supervising deputy attorney general is Edward Kim. He graduated from UCLA and Cornell Law School. He's been a deputy in the Health Quality Enforcement Section since 2006. He has successfully represented healthcare agencies in connection with disciplinary proceedings before the Office of Administrative Hearings, Superior Courts, Courts of Appeal, and the California Supreme Court. Ed was also formerly a lead prosecutor at the Division of Investigations, Health Quality Investigations Unit's field offices in LA, under the board's former vertical enforcement model of investigation and adjudication. And prior to joining HQE, Edward Kim was in private practice for several years at large international law firms, practicing corporate finance, securities, and other business litigation. So we wanted to just acknowledge that Ed has taken on the role of an SDAG in the Health Quality Enforcement Section and will lead a team in doing your important work. And that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castro. Do we have Ms. Nichols?
Oh, I'm sorry, I can call Ms. Nichols in at the same time. Just a second. Good afternoon, Ms. Nichols. Yeah, you should now be able to mute.
Oops, we can't hear you, Ms. Nichols.
How about now?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. I'm Deputy Chief Kathleen Nichols. It's my pleasure to update the board on the Division of Investigations Health Quality Investigation Unit. There are currently 15 investigator vacancies, which is an 18% vacancy rate. However, there are 4 new investigators starting in the next several weeks, which will reduce our vacancies to 11, which would be a 13% vacancy rate. Additionally, there are 21 candidates in background, and we continue to conduct hiring panels to identify additional candidates in order to immediately fill these remaining vacancies. 2 of our 3 commanders are retiring December 30th. Southern Area Commander Charlene McKenzie is retiring with 20 years of state service, all with the Medical Board and HQIU. LA Metro Area Commander Laura Gardhouse is retiring with 23 years of state service. 18 of those years were with the Medical Board and HQIU. I would like to thank them for their dedication to our mission of public protection and the truly great impact they have made. And we wish them the very best in their retirement. We have already conducted interviews for their anticipated vacancies and are working with HR on the final steps of the hiring process for the new commanders. Since the last board meeting, DOJ special agents received a 12% pay increase in a side letter agreement with CSLEA and CalHR. Their pay was already 5% more than HQIU investigators, so it raises the difference to 17%. As a result of this, we currently have 6 investigators that are in background to leave for DOJ. Although it's going to be difficult to compete with the 17% salary disparity, which absolutely should be addressed, we are committed to exploring other ways to retain our investigators. HQIU has implemented a continuous improvement team comprised of 8 investigators throughout the state. This team will meet quarterly and seek the opinions of their colleagues throughout the state to discuss improvement ideas and relay them quickly to upper management. I met with the chairs of this committee earlier this week, and we discussed some ideas already regarding investigator retention and removing obstacles for the investigators so they can manage their caseloads more efficiently and effectively. We have scheduled 6 hours of training the first week of December with the Attorney General's office to discuss subpoenas, expert selection, and subject interviews. We are also in the process of scheduling secondary regulation for all DFI investigators, which will include segments regarding interviewing victims of trauma. We also completed the last week of our 4-week mini academy for new investigators the first week of November, and we'll be scheduling dates next year for the next mini academy to incorporate all of the new additional hires. And now I'd like to share with you an updated graph. It's a graph that I shared with you at the last board meeting, but I have some updated figures. Sean, are you able to cue that?
Sorry, I just passed you the, sorry, I don't have anything to present for you, Kathleen, so I just made you the presenter.
Oh, I'm sorry
So
about that. I thought you
wanted me
had.
to show, or?
Yes, actually I did. Well, let me just.
Something. Is it in the board packet, Kathleen? I can pull it up.
It should be, but that's okay. In the interest of time, I will just go over. It was the updated graph just showing that in January of 2020, our pending workload was 2,340 investigations. And at the end of October 2021, our pending workload is 1,605 investigations. So during that time, we've had a net reduction of 735 investigations. And then also we were keeping track of how many cases in HQIU were over a year old. And from January to October, we have made a net reduction of 266 investigations. As we continue to be successful completing those aged cases, the closed case average will rise, and it's a reflection of us being able to complete the oldest cases in our caseload. We continue to hold weekly meetings with board staff to discuss aged and priority cases, as well as weekly discussions to improve processes and resolve issues timely. Additionally, we continue to send board staff a monthly report with status updates on our aged cases. I'd also like to make a plug for the medical board's expert program. We desperately need new experts in all specialties, but particularly experts in pain management, general and vascular surgery, alternative medicine, endocrinology, ophthalmology, orthopedics, physical medicine, neurology, and doctors who can do mental and physical exams when there's issues of impairment. So for all of you, for board members who can reach out to your contacts, members of the public, if you have doctors that you think are great, please encourage them to be part of this expert program. We rely on a pool of experts in order to evaluate these cases at the end of the investigation. So it's really important that we have a good group of qualified experts to handle those reviews. I look forward to my continued meetings with board staff, and this concludes my update. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Ms. Nichols, thank you. One question on the experts. What's the biggest impediment to getting those qualified experts? Is it the pay? Is it the time? I mean, what is what could we help solve for in that regard?
It's the quantity. We don't have enough experts on the list. And so when staff reach out to match experts with a particular case, they have to have experience with that procedure or treatment in question. So a lot of the times we don't have experts on the list, and we have to do outside research and try and find experts off of the list who might not be familiar with the format, or they haven't attended the expert training. So the goal would be to get as many experts as possible in each specialty so that there's a good pool of experts. So when the investigators or our expert procurement unit staff reach out, we can make those matches and have available experts. So sometimes investigations are delayed several months just trying to find an appropriate expert that can review the case.
And do we need to, are we not paying them enough, or are they not interested in this work because it is just too time consuming or complicated? And what are the types of things that we could share in the networks we have, or, you know, even work on legislatively, if that's something that we need to think about, to help give give the program the tools it needs to be a success.
I think definitely, you know, the money is a factor, although recently the rates were raised. And if the experts attend the training, they get that increased dollar amount in their hourly figure. So part of it is just we need more outreach, and we need, you know, we need it monthly. We need constant additions of qualified experts in the field. And that's for the benefit of everyone, for consumers, for the doctors. You know, you have to have a good pool of experts in order to choose from.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions of Ms. Nichols or Ms. Castro?
I have a question.
Mr. Watkins?
The expert challenge that you face right now, that is pretty significant. Is that fair to say?
It is very
It's a significant
significant.
problem.
It is, and also the quality of the opinions that we're getting back. So if we send a case to expert and the quality of the opinion is not good, that can ultimately affect the case, and it can affect the Attorney General not being able to accept the case. And we are often asked to get second expert opinions, or we need to clarify things from the first opinion, and that adds time as well.
Oh, thank you. I have a question for Ms. Castro, though, also. But I'll wait till she gets.
A quick question, or just a quick request. Can you send out that list so we know which categories you need?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, Ms. Nichols, I can tell the physician side and the expert. I think it is the time commitment and the pay for especially higher specialties like vascular surgery, cardiac surgery. So the you know, people have really, if they do even amount of the work they do for the other side, they get paid about 4 to 5 times. So it's a tough one, but I think we got to continuously look for experts, and I think TJ is correct on this one, because we lost many, or we had to settle for a lower discipline in many of these cases because we had marginal quality experts, I can say, rather than poor quality, marginal. And sometimes they give an opinion and then they change the opinion when they look at the other side opinion. So these are the issues we do have to correct. I can't tell you how what we are paying is unfortunately for their qualifications, it is low, even though we raised it. I remember that the time we raised, before that, it was even worse.
It takes courage to sit in judgment of your fellow professional. And it takes a special kind of person to want to review your cases to begin with. The expert challenges exist in any litigation because the types of cases that you have under your laws require expert input. We still win cases. We still get revocations with our experts that we have. I don't want to denigrate the ones that we do have that are successful, but it is a challenge, and I agree with Ms. Nichols and with Dr. Gunanadev with what you said. We only pay them about $200, I think, to review thousands and thousands of pages of medical records. And these are not the best medical records. These are not the medical records that 160,000 physicians probably keep and are doing an okay job on. These are folks that come to our attention that fall short. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Dr. Hoffman?
I can tell you that we are thankful to UC system people because they're salaried employees, and they do volunteer more often to do the expert review. But a practicing vascular surgeon or a cardiac surgeon in the community, it's extremely difficult. to spend
And we take them out of their doctor's office
Yep.
to sit around waiting to testify in our hearings. We don't pay them for that lost time. We don't recompense them for the loss in patient services that they could be doing during that time. So it is a big ask, and we're always very happy when they meet the challenge. And I am very happy that you found a way to pay them higher hourly rates if they take our excellent training. Kathleen's staff and my staff participate in putting on that training. We listen to what the experts have to say, and we take the feedback and adjust as needed.
I have Dr. Hawkins and Dr. Yip, and then Mr. Watkins. I know you want to speak again. So Dr. Hawkins?
Yeah, Ms. Nichols, thanks for the
And me
two
too.
charts of pending investigations and the case over 365. So those are encouraging, although they're higher numbers than any of us want to see. But it's hard to imagine that they're going to continue to plateau or go down with your comments about the pull on investigators from HQIU. And the more we hear about it, the more discouraging it is that we'll be able to get ahead of what we need to do to close cases. These are really high numbers, 1,600 pending investigations, that's 1,600, and 719 cases over a year. I don't know if everybody saw the chart, and that's why I'm bringing it to everyone's attention. Thank you.
Yes, and we have made significant progress in the aged cases because although 1,600 is a lot of investigations, prior we had 2,340, and that was an even bigger massive amount. And yes, the pay disparity is going to continue to be a big issue for those board members who have been here a while. It seems like it's a broken record. We had this problem before, and we had a 40% vacancy rate, and then finally our salaries got brought up close. We had that luxury maybe a year and a half, and now here we are again with this huge disparity. So qualified investigators, 17% is a huge amount of money. I mean, you're talking a couple $1,000s a month. And so even though people like this work and like the mission, they're going to leave, some of them for the salary. So it's just kind of disappointing that that's where our focus is on other investigative groups, that, this is a life and death situation for a lot of patients. This is patient safety. This isn't about fraud. This isn't about money, but somehow, those other agencies are valued more in the salaries that they can give. But you have my full commitment. We are doing everything we can to look at other areas where we can retain staff and keep qualified staff and keep them functioning with the job. But caseloads are a big issue. That's another reason why people leave, is because the workload is so great. So one of the things that we did with the expert procurement unit is we pulled off the things that the investigators had to do with the experts, and we had a new unit start doing that. And we're continuing that focus. There's other things that we can do to make the system more efficient with respect to getting medical records, resolving discrepancies on record certifications, all kinds of projects we're working on now to find some additional resources for those tasks to free up the investigators' time so they can focus on their investigative work and get these timelines down.
Dr. Yip, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, I think it's time to do a ritual campaign again after the pandemic. We did a year or two ago before the pandemic. The Loma Linda, USC, they were willing to host the meetings, and actually quite a good turnout. And actually, that was the first time that Janet Jones went to the training in San Bernardino. And I think we can really reach out to the dean again, all the schools to recruit and the expert. The other thing I think, good thing about recruiting from academics, that they're on salary. So they don't worry about getting too much about taking time away from the prime practice and go to testify and do report. So that's my suggestion, that we can do a campaign to reach out to the academic and recruit expert. If we recruit 200 experts and 20 or 30 are good ones, and I think this is a plus. The other thing I make suggestion before is that we should collect a library, a collection of how cases are ruined by bad expert to be a teaching tool. that can have feedback from the DAG, from HQIU, and from our own staff. Thank you.
Dr. Yep, Ms. Lubiana.
Yes, and please excuse the noisy office mate behind me or around me here. But 2 points that I thought of as we were talking about this. Sorry. Number one, for the expert reviewer program, before pandemic, I had the privilege to join one of those and see what it's about. So to my fellow board members who haven't done that, I encourage you to see what our doctors, our reviewers go through when they want to join our program. And so
Oops, I think you muted Ms. Lubiana.
Lost sound there. Can you hear me? Okay. One thing I envision is that we can improve and create like a boot camp for our reviewers, something pretty more extensive than what we have now. So the one I sat through was a day-long course, which was like an overview of everything. But what I would like to see is, one session on how to testify, another session on how to write a thorough report, something like that. So, we could build out these modules. Another thing with respect to recruiting them, let's be honest, they're not doing it for the money, right? So what drives people to do that? And I think it's service. And so, people follow leaders because they believe what they believe. What do we believe in? Public protection. So I would think they want to do it because they want to serve. And I think we have to build a campaign to get that idea out there, to encourage people to want to sign up for our program. So I think there's definitely ways that we can build this out and improve, and happy to volunteer to help with that at some point. And I already have. So
thank you, Ms. Lubiana. Mr. Watkins, looping back to you.
Hi, this is for Ms. Castro. So I've been really sensitive to reading these DAG memos and, pointing out an unconscious bias. I'm going to call that, that's the best way to put it, that, kind of slants the case, moves it in a particular direction. But I'm going to set that aside because I'm seeing new things in your department. But yesterday, something interesting happened in that, the DAG is for the people and represent the people. And this was an open session, and during that time, the DAG in question was so solidly representing the case for the doctor that it was almost unnerving. It was surreal. I can't see Ms. Castro. Is she still here? Can you hear me?
She's there, Mr. Watkins. Yes, I can see her.
Oh, I can't see her. So then this happened, and she was disparaging towards the decision that was initially made, and continued for about 5 minutes to argue the case for why this doctor should why should we should let this decision go. I want to understand how that that's a cultural element, but I haven't seen that in another DAG. So I want to be fair about how I speak to that deal, because I have seen that previously in the DAG memos, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention because I know you've actively worked on cleaning this out. So my question is that normal? Because
Mr. Watkins, my best recommendation for you would be to connect with Ms. Castro offline and talk about the specific circumstances of that matter. Just because that's a closed session matter, right? When we have
no, it's not. It was an open session. It was an open hearing. So that's why I'm speaking about it. Yeah, if it was in a closed session, I would have spoken to it in the backdrop.
Okay.
So leaving aside the closed session, which attorney-client privileged and work product privileged,
Yeah.
And the reason why those need to stay like that is because if we go to hearing, they cannot be public, okay?
I understand.
Secondly, with respect to, I'm sorry, do you have more to ask me?
No, no.
Okay. Secondly, I can't control how people read those memos, but I can tell you that at the top of the page, it says Department of Justice. So we're here to do justice, and sometimes justice is balanced. I think that that is the emblem of the Lady Justice. And what you see in those memos should be balanced. I can't control how you read it. All I can tell you is that every effort is made to give you all the tools and all the facts that we believe are pertinent and material within the context of a memo that encapsulates thousands and thousands of pages and hundreds of hours of efforts by Ms. Nichols' staff, by the staff at the medical board, Mr. Pacifica and Ms. Jones, and by my staff. It's our best effort to do justice. And you vote, and we do what you ask. If you adopt it, then it's a settlement. And if you say no, under Government Code Section 11507A through H, you have other options, just like you do with cases that come from the Office of Administrative Hearings. To your other point with respect to petitions that you hear in open hearing, we represent the Attorney General's office in those matters. That is why you will hear our staff say we're here to represent the people. We're here to represent the Attorney General's office. And when we undertake those cases, those are arising in a different context. Those are no longer discipline. Those are petitions that, as the service side of this board, under Business and Professions Code Section 2307, you are bound to listen to and consider as long as folks have met the requirements set forth in that statute. It requires a character reference from someone in California saying that this person penalty should be reduced or they should be reinstated. In that particular case, it was fully vetted. I'm happy to put you in contact with myself if you have any questions about it. That was an out-of-state discipline case where the other state just gave him a fine, and we gave him 7 years of probation. And 4 years into the probation, this doctor wanted out. And what you heard from that DAG Brenda Reyes, who's a retired annuitant, she's already retired and she comes back to do these cases, was what she felt, in the Department of Justice's opinion, would execute justice. But again, it's not our decision. We advocate, just like you heard the defense counsel advocate. And the fact that they were aligned is neither here nor there, because that decision still comes back to you for votes and for you to decide whether or not this person deserves a petition to reduce a 7-year probation to 4 years, allow him to terminate pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 2307, given the fact that the out-of-state discipline was nothing, relatively speaking, to what California imposed. And I think that was Dag Reyes's point, that it was, he got 7 years here, but yet back in his state, he got a fine for sexually harassing an employee. And what I heard Ms. Reyes also argue was the fact that the disciplinary guidelines are 7 years to revocation for sexual abuse of a patient under Business and Professions Code Section 726 and 729. Her point was he was given 7 years by this judge for sexually harassing an employee about 6 years ago out of state. So anyway, I can't discuss any of your impressions on the closed session matters, but I'm familiar with every case in my office that my deputies handle on your behalf. So I hope that helped you understand where she was coming from. And not only where she was coming from, but where the office was coming from, the Attorney General.
It helped me, it helped me a lot, but not in the way that I feel that is helpful. In that, when you say justice, when she is speaking for 5.5 minutes, and just in defense of the doctor, no matter if you say it's valid, it's okay for it to speak. Not even his counsel was speaking. So it looked a little unbalanced to me. And that you don't have control over that. So I'm at peace with it. I just wanted to raise that because when those things show up in the DAG memo and I mention it, then, you know, then everybody's upset about it. And
The memo is not the same as what a
No,
petition.
I know it's the
Okay,
same.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional comments before I ask for public comment? Dr. Ganonica?
Thank you. I just to give a little answer to TJ is that it is uncommon, but when DAG actually agrees with the judge's thing, they do support, and that gives us value because the both sides feel that the appropriate discipline was done or appropriate decision was made. So, but TJ, it's very uncommon. So you heard maybe first time, but because I'm there for 10 years, I heard that maybe every other year or every 3 years. It's not very common. Most of the time, DAG wants to, if we did not adopt, DAG will even come back with much higher discipline than what judge recommended.
Just to respond, I've heard this I've seen many of these kind of responses before also. And this one just struck me as out of the norm because of the strong position, the strength of, and maybe it's a presentation style. I'll just write it off. I just wanted to raise it. Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Dr. Hawkins, is your hand raised? Okay, let's move to public comment, please. Sean?
Okay, we've got the Q&A window open for anyone wishing to make a public comment. You can drop a message in there and I'll call on you, or you can raise your hand. We still have one call-in user, so if that call-in user would like to make a public comment, you can raise your hand by dialing *6 on your phone. First up here, we have Susan Lauren. Susan, let me find your line. Okay, you should be getting the request on your side to unmute. Go ahead, Susan, your line's open.
Yeah, hi. I've been listening very carefully to this discussion. I'm quite sick about it, frankly. The idea that the experts are there for service and not for money. Well, let's look at Terry Dubrow, who came and lied at my civil trial, who is an expert for the Medical Board of California. He gets paid several $1,000s an hour. I see some sour faces on my screen, and I'm not sure why. This is always I'm a victim here and trying to make things safer for other people. And what I'd appreciate is the board actually helping so that people don't go through what I went through. Terry Dubrow came and lied at my trial. He laughed in his deposition. They made a joke about how much money he gets paid. He works repeatedly with Tom McAndrews, who has not only represented Saul Berger, who did these heinous things to me, but he has also represented, I know, Kenneth Hughes and Robert Yoho, who have several wrongful deaths each to their names. These guys work repeatedly together. Terry Dubrow uses his status as a medical board expert to get his TV shows in which he misleads the public about things like liposuction, which is scientifically proven to be bad. And it's this whole cycle that you're not addressing that is taking my precious life from me. And hundreds and hundreds of women that I've talked to, and some men too. And you can't have plastic surgeons. I understand where your way of thinking would be, oh, we need plastic surgeons to testify for each other. But the bottom line of what I say is really true, which is that they're doing bad procedures and covering for each other. And I have so much evidence, and I have presented a lot of it to you in writing through my speeches, and it's as if I'm talking to a wall, except for TJ, who has actually acknowledged that people are in pain that have valid reasons for trying to make things safer for other people. So I'm not saying that all doctors are bad. My father was a doctor, a pediatrician who did cutting edge research, and he was an amazing human being. I have a great doctor now. So, the experts, there was an expert in the Hughes case who was corrupt and lied profusely, and then nothing happened for those 2 cases of wrongful death. The plastic surgeons really need an overhaul. I don't know how else to ask you. I'm looking at all your faces now, and
10 seconds remain.
I want you to do something real. I'll write this to you. I'll write it in a letter so you can see it in writing again. But we need to not have an idea that, oh, these poor doctors aren't getting paid. You know, I do all this.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Helena Papas. Helena, you should be getting a request on your screen. Go ahead, Helena. Your line is open. Yep.
Can you hear me?
We can. Please proceed.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Helena Pappas. I would like to begin by saying that I have an active complaint against a doctor that is currently in the investigation stage at the Health Quality Investigation Unit. In order to not compromise the complaint, the comments I make today will pertain only to the process of how the medical board has managed my complaint, or to be more accurate, has mismanaged my complaint. I have emails and letters to and from my assigned investigator and the medical board staff to substantiate the comments I will make. My complaint against the doctor has wide-ranging implications that directly concern the health and safety of all Californians. The Center for Public Interest Law mentions specific aspects of my complaint in their written report to the legislature during the Sunset Review hearing of the medical board earlier this year, as well as in their oral testimony to the legislature. My complaint was initially closed by the Central Complaint Unit shortly after I submitted it in 2018. That decision to close my complaint was made by an expert reviewer contracted by the medical board. It was reopened after one of your staff members in the executive office, the former deputy director of enforcement of the medical board, who was working part-time as a retired annuitant, learned of my complaint allegations, reviewed my entire case file, and determined that it had been improperly closed. It is my understanding that documents that I had submitted to the Central Complaint Unit were never looked at by the CCU expert reviewer. My complaint was then reopened and forwarded to HQIU in April of 2020. The retired annuitant told me that it shouldn't take long for HQIU to complete my investigation because almost all the relevant documents had already been provided to the medical board. I now turn to the mismanagement of my complaint by HQIU since April of 2020. The investigator assigned to my case essentially let my case sit on her desk with no action for over a year. That investigator refused to review documents that I provided.
30 seconds remain.
I may need to do this in the next set of public comments then. The investigator refused to review documents that I provided despite my pleas for her to do so. She told me it was not her job to review the documents. She told me direct quote,
10 seconds
I'm
remain.
just a police officer. My job is to be a fact gatherer. It is a medical consultant, not me, who has to review the file. I hope this board and the members of the public find it.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Eric Anderst. Eric, you getting the prompt on your side? Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Kathleen Nichols is the only person I trust when she speaks. I think she is terrific. She should be the medical board executive director. Gloria thinks it takes courage for doctors to sit in judgment of other doctors, but you're all human beings listening to other human beings being harmed. And apparently it's not hard for any of you to let bad doctors off the hook. It's not hard for you to all sit up there on your thrones and criticize the public for trying to hold you accountable for your actions. Since Gloria is in the AG's office, I'd like her to look into the illegal activity of the board requiring participants to register any name or information in order to participate in a meeting. Carrie offered erroneous information and apparently won't own up to it being incorrect. Speaking of the board's expert program, what is the point of having a pool of experts? There's one expert, Dr. Salma Khan, that we're aware of, who was not even qualified to be an expert and has apparently railroaded a certain doctor into an accusation. When I tried to get information on her, the board redacted information that should have been public. So what are you hiding? I'd also appreciate it if the board members would inquire why Dr. Aaron Stone, one of this board's, I'm hoping, now fired medical experts, hasn't been disciplined publicly for screwing up the case of Dr. Kenneth Hughes back in 2019. If you'll recall, Dr. Hughes' case had to be thrown out because of all the conscious errors your own medical expert made on the case. So one, is he still an expert for the board? And two, why hasn't he been reprimanded for his actions that ended up letting a dangerous doctor off the hook? Why haven't we seen an accusation against him? Dr. Hughes was accused of leaving a patient with a perforated bowel and sepsis and had to undergo further surgery. How many of you now want to make an appointment with Dr. Hughes since his record is clear on Breeze? Is there any doctors out there currently being investigated by Dr. Aaron Stone? You should object based on his antics on the Hughes case. But it begs the question, how many of your experts are unqualified and screwing up cases? All of Stone's cases should be being called into question now that he screwed up that case and was called on it. Recently, I came across some information online from a doctor defense attorney, Nicole D. Hendrickson, who wrote that she represented an MD in an accusation involving 8 patients and 16 causes for discipline arising out of allegations of inappropriate opiate prescribing, failure to closely monitor controlled substances, gross negligence, repeated negligent acts, and failure to adequately document records. She goes on to say that after a 1/2 day bifurcated hearing, multiple allegations and patients
30 seconds remaining
were dismissed for failure of the Medical Board of California to meet the statute of limitations. I have more to say, but I'll have to continue it. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Rosie Arthur's-daughter. Rosie, you should be getting a request on your side.
Got it? Can you
Please go
hear
ahead.
me?
We can.
Okay. In response to Ms. Nichols on the continuing issue of the experts, 10 years ago, we had more or less a standard of care, and we had guidelines that went along with that that were congruent with the laws of the state. In 2014, there was a sweetheart deal reached between the workers' comp defense interests and the medical board, which lowered the standard of care and virtually upended all medical care, not just workers' comp, but everything. Along with that, the guidelines were, we were gifted antiquated medical guidelines, some that didn't even talk about current medications or the side effects or the precautions or how they're metabolized, etc. And the guidelines that were in place before that worked with the old structure don't work with the new structure. And you probably have people there on the pain side of the house following the 2016 CDC guidelines that were redacted and following the workers' comp for patients who are not on workers' comp. And that is very typical. So they're not following your guidelines. And if you have those experts reviewing other experts, the case is not going to go forward. I'm a forensic neuropsychologist. I work at both Fry and Aubert as far as rules of evidence. And I've reviewed all those illegible documents. And I can tell you from all across the disciplines that you can find problems. Now, when I take the cases that you've published, and then I look back at the actual evidence in the case and how it goes to the guidelines and to the laws, they're totally incongruent. So it's almost like every single case, there's a major flaw in it, and it's based on people either not being aware of what the guidelines actually are, or there's something else happening, because I've seen cases where a person was disciplined for actually prescribing the correct
30 seconds
medication,
remain.
the safe medication, or whatever. So there has got to be a real analysis of this whole process to make sure that everybody, including the expert, is on board with these rules. And if you have people from the pain side
10
of the
seconds
house
remain.
using the antiquated 2016 CDC rules, you've got a big problem. And most of your experts are going to probably be in that bucket.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Jeff Rizzo. Jeff?
Can you hear me?
We can. Please go ahead.
Yes, I'm continuing on Eric's comments. This is the second time we've heard details of the board and or Attorney General's office screwing up so that cases or portions of cases had to be dismissed. Remember when Judge Feinstein took Gloria Castro to task over the AG's office getting a case thrown out for the very same reasons? Gloria said at the time she'd looked into it, but has never reported back what she found out, even though Eric's asked numerous times. Must have made the AG's office look bad, and she wants to cover it up. It makes us wonder just how often these screw-ups go on and why this kind of information is never mentioned at meetings or in the annual report. Do you not think the negative things that go on are important to those reading your annual report? How is anyone supposed to properly hold you accountable if you hide this type of information? TJ, this should probably be included in your report to the state auditor. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Virginia Farr. Virginia, you should be seeing the request to unmute on your end.
Hello again. So again, back to the experts. It's really, really concerning to know that these experts lie in civil trials, impoverishing those harmed, and then are able to work at the medical board and represent a medical board when they impoverish people in civil trials, making the cases not go to trial, making them end up, I can't even talk anymore, broke. Like these experts are breaking people that have been harmed, that are traumatized, and then you okay them as experts on the medical board. To me, that is corruption, and it should be illegal. Dubrow should not be on your medical board as a witness. He has done enough illegal stuff that he should be out. And yet I still recently seen a case where he testified against somebody. That's why we say it's corrupt, is we see stuff like this and it makes no sense and it looks like corruption to us. Regarding Ms. Nichols, thank you for including trauma in your training. I really appreciate that. I have over 1,000 hours in trauma-informed care and understanding trauma, so that is vital. But I'm also wondering if you train your experts on reading records that are false. Like, how can they know the truth if the truth isn't there? So I wonder if they're trained on that and the protocol for that and how you get the truth out, because it's a really bad problem figuring out the truth in these records. And I think that's it for now. Thank you. And again, prevention. Start with prevention. Every time, prevention. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. At this time, do not see any additional requests.
Thank you, Sean. I'll bring it back to the board. And if there are no further comments from members, we'll move on to our next agenda item. Dr. Thorpe.
Thanks, Ms. Lawson. I appreciate your patience. I do think there are some areas where we struggle with our medical experts, and I don't know what. I do know that there's a series of problems. It is very difficult work. It's time consuming, and even when your heart's in it, it's still extremely difficult. And not only is it difficult to do the review, but it's difficult to go then and testify. And to just say, well, let all the university guys do it, that's actually, I mean, I guess that's one solution, but there's a whole set of people who are working in the community who don't live in that world and who don't practice in that world. So it's really also critical that we have community doctors who actually are managing a practice and trying to maintain in that way as well, which just tangentially brings up another concern. This is going back to item 6, and this is about the number of licenses issued in the 4-year fiscal history under item 6C, page 9. And it concerns me a little bit that we're seeing a significant decrease in licenses issued from fiscal year 18-19 to fiscal year 2021 by approximately 2,300 licenses less issued in 2021 than in 18 and 19, 2018, 2019. And concerned that is a trend. We're already facing a physician shortage in California, and to see that, hopefully that's not a trend, but it certainly is concerning just to see that over that 2-year period. And I just want to say, I don't know if it's appropriate, and I don't want to be inappropriate, but I really am sensitive to the people that are concerned about what's happening here. The idea that somehow we would think it's okay for one child to be harmed or injured. I mean, I just lost my son 2 months ago. It is not okay. It is not okay to lose anybody. We're not advocating for that kind of thing. We are trying to do the right thing. And, unfortunately, and I'm not just saying making excuses, but bad things happen. And there's not always a way to be just in the face of difficult problems. I mean, I think there are times when people have complications, they die, unfortunately. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the doctor did something wrong. And I'm not, you can take that for what it's worth, but it's just not to say that there aren't times when that's true. I believe there are times when doctors make mistakes and they are the reason for why something goes wrong and they shouldn't be protected. But when they have operated within the standard and something still goes wrong, then that's a tragedy, but does not necessarily mean that doctor needs to be disciplined. That would be my only comment. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Thorpe. Are there additional comments? I'd like to keep us on track. All right, let's move on to agenda item 8, which is an update from the Department of Consumer Affairs. Ms. Holmes.
Good evening, Board President Lawson and board members. I am Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for allowing me to provide a department update. DCA appreciates all board members and staff who have continued to serve through a pandemic that has affected us all. We are working together to find the right balance of staying connected and productive while staying safe and healthy. DCA and all its boards and bureaus continue to look to the future and use lessons learned to identify long-term efficiencies and policy changes. Staff are working in the office to provide the most effective consumer protection and public service, while also utilizing telework where appropriate. DCA is assembling a task force to help the department create a telework policy that will provide further clarity and structure for managers and staff. To combat the spread of COVID-19 and protect vulnerable communities, California has implemented enhanced safety measures for state employees and workers in healthcare settings. State employees must show proof of vaccination or be subject to regular COVID-19 testing. DCA's testing program kicked off in early October with the launch of the DCA Headquarters 1 pilot site. Select programs were designated to test at Headquarters 1, and the list of programs recently expanded due to the capabilities of the site. Board and committee members must follow health and safety protocols if they plan to visit a DCA location or attend an in-person board meeting, regardless of the location. Members must verify vaccination or follow testing protocols. Please communicate any plans for in-person meetings as soon as possible so we can assist with coordination of teleconference options, vaccination verification, and COVID-19 testing. DCA recognizes the difficulty of planning for future meetings as the pandemic continues to evolve. On September 16th, Governor Newsom signed AB 361 that extends the ability of boards and committees to meet remotely by amending the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. The executive order tied to the state of emergency was ended when this new law took effect. Under this law, remote meetings are allowed until January 30th, 2022, after which time meetings will need to be in person in accordance with all aspects of the Open Meetings Act. We don't know what additional changes to the law may be coming, but I think we all recognize there are benefits to remote meeting options, such as increased public participation, cost savings, and a lower carbon footprint due to reduced travel. DCA encourages boards and bureaus to continue utilizing remote meetings this year to protect the health of staff, board members, and the public. We will keep you updated on any additional changes to meeting requirements. I'd like to share that DCA has been made aware of various scams affecting boards and bureaus. We have shared information about these scams on the DCA website and social media. Please take a moment to visit the DCA Fraud Alert website to be aware of these scams and learn how to protect yourself from malicious individuals. If any licensees or consumers notice anything that seems suspicious, please let the board or DCA know right away. As a reminder, 2021 is a mandatory sexual harassment prevention training year. That means all employees and board members are required to complete the training this year, which is rapidly approaching its end. Board members will access the training through the Learning Management System, or LMS, which is DCA's training portal. Board and Bureau Relations is happy to assist members with any questions or concerns you have about the LMS. As always, Board and Bureau Relations is here to help. If there's anything we can do to assist, please reach out. This concludes my presentation, and I'll hand it back over to Board President Lawson.
Ms. Holmes, thank you. Are there any questions from members of Ms. Holmes? All right, I'd like to open it up for public comment then, Sean.
Okay, that Q&A window is open for anyone who'd like to make a public comment. That way, and then we also have the raising the hand option. Still one call-in user. If you're interested in making a public comment, please press *3 on your phone.
And I'd like to just remind the commenters, because I was noting in the Q&A that these are comments on the update Ms. Holmes just provided from the Department of Consumer Affairs.
Thank you. First up, we have Helena Pappas. Helena, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm finishing my comments about my mismanagement of my complaint. It does pertain to the central complaint unit, so I will continue.
I'm sorry, Ms. Pappas. This agenda item is on the update from DCA. So if your comment is related to that, please continue.
I believe that it
report
should.
that Ms. Holmes just gave.
I believe that it should be, because anything related to the DCA should, my complaint relates to the DCA, and I think I should be able to complete my public comment. I think it's extremely important. This board is wondering about timelines, and you're expressing that you have no idea why you're not getting the data. I have the data on a serious complaint. I should be able to speak about a DCA matter.
Ms. Pappas, I would invite you, could you please submit your comments in writing so that we can receive those? Because we do have
Excuse me, Ms. Lawson, thank you for asking that. I don't mind providing those comments to you, and I'm happy to do so. But there are also other people on this call, public advocates, who are also wondering about this issue. And I am someone who has data and an active complaint going through the process, which the statute of limitations is almost going to run. And no one, and the last 2 days ago, I had a telephone call with Miss Jones, with Jenna Jones, and she told me that they cannot find an expert reviewer. HQIU can't find an expert reviewer to review my case. If my case is not reviewed, it goes away. I do have a legal background too. I am a member of the State Bar of California, and I understand the implications of a statute of limitations. The fact that there are that many cases that are running up against a statute of limitations is directly related to the DCA update, because if a case goes away, there is no discipline and people are harmed. So, you know, I do have public continued comments. I would like to share them with the other public advocates on this call. I do not want to just
Ms. Pappas, let me please invite you to join us tomorrow for the time on our agenda for items that are not on the agenda, but I do need to keep this meeting on track, and this comment is not appropriate as part of this agenda item. In fairness to
I just do want to say that I do disagree with that, because I actually am recovering from surgery related to the doctor's care. It is my 5th remedial surgery from the doctor's care. I had that surgery yesterday. I called in today to try to make a comment that I think is really important. So my health might not allow me to call in tomorrow. I would appreciate you giving me the minutes that are required for me to finish this public comment.
Ms. Pappas, we've already provided those. So Sean, can we please move on to the next commenter?
Yes, and Kathleen Nichols had sent me a private message asking me to let Ms. Pappas know that she will be contacting her. So next up, we have Natalie. Natalie, you should be seeing a request on your end. Natalie, are you seeing the request to unmute your side? Okay, moving on to Rosie Arthur. Oh, Natalie's line just opened. Natalie, you there?
Yes, I am.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My concerns are about in California, privately owned survey rooms. There is nobody that's overseeing them as far as I have been able to find out. Once every 3 years, they are.
Natalie, we're having a hard time hearing you. If you could come closer to your device, or.
Okay, my volume's all the way up. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think when you're directing at wherever your microphone is, it's coming through much clearer. So if you could just stay facing that way, it sounds a little better. Thank you.
All right, thank you. My concern is the privately owned surgery rooms that these doctors own in California. As far as I've been able to find out, they're only being monitored once every 3 years. There are horrific things going on.
I'm sorry, Natalie, but the comment needs to be on the agenda item, and that's the update from Ms. Holmes from DCA.
Okay, so can I comment tomorrow?
Yes, during items not on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Rosie Arthur's daughter. Rosie, are you there? Should be seeing the request on your end.
Yes. Can you
Please
hear
go
me?
ahead. We can.
Okay. 2 quick items. In 2014, certain pathways to the laws regarding intractable pain and for the providers the ability to treat that pain were removed from the Department of Consumer Affairs website. Even when the references are made for, let's go to the law, the statutes, or whatever, they've also been deleted. These are a critical part of a patient receiving care, and they should be on the Department of Consumer Affairs site. It's on other sites, but not the DCA, or sorry, the DCA. So, and I've been asking for this for 6 years to get that back on there. Number 2 is just the fact that when people are making complaints, when people are reviewing complaints, all aspects of handling the consumer affairs, The big buzzword years ago, 10 years ago, was evidence-based. And that sounded great, except for, as we know now, a lot of it is generated by computers, by IT people, by people who are trying to make a record to defend.
I need to stop you as well, because is this the comment on Ms. Holmes' presentation, her update from DCA?
Well, it's related to the things that go on, and one of those issues is the quality of the records that are reviewed and
Right, so
how that comes about.
Please make this comment during agenda item 12 tomorrow, public comments on items not on the agenda.
Certainly.
Thank you. Sean, move on to the next commenter, please.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Sandra Perez. Sandra, let me open your line. Sandra, you should be seeing.
My comment's not really regarding Ms. Holmes' documentation. I had a quick comment for Dr. Thorpe. You should be ashamed because
I'm sorry, we got to stay on the agenda item.
Understood. But you know what, Dr. Thorpe,
tomorrow.
We lost our children.
Thank you,
from
Sean.
This time I don't see any additional requests in queue.
Thank you. We'll bring it back to the board, and then if there are no further comments, we're going to move on to agenda item 9, which is a brief update on the status of revising guidelines for prescribing controlled substances for pain. And that is Mr. Persifka.
I would like to thank the Madam President for directing me to be brief, which I will. Since the date of the last meeting, the task force has met twice. During that time, under the direction of the task force, the executive has been working to do all the preparatory work to update the guidelines. We have reviewed all relevant legislation and regulation in the state, which requires the guidelines to be updated. We have looked at the relevant federal guidelines, in particular the ones issued by the Center for Disease Control, by the Federation of State Medical Boards, and by the Department of Health and Human Services, mapping those along with our existing guidelines, which were issued in 2014. In addition, we have learned that the Center for Disease Control guidelines are in the process right now of being updated, and we expect those to be released shortly, either before the end of the year or early in the next year. Obviously, those will be incorporated. We've also mapped some changes from other state medical boards that have happened recently, in particular Arizona, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania. After having identified the issues that require updating, we have sought to map those with a panel of experts who are balanced and come from the areas of anesthesiology, neurology, specializing in pain management, as well as including primary care physicians. Particularly for the latter one, we have reached out to the California Academy of Family Physicians, who are very helpful to us in directing us to the right experts. We have tried to have a balanced panel, having academic qualifications, clinical qualifications, and also general family practice backgrounds. That panel was presented to the task force this week, and it was approved. And what we plan to do next week is to begin working very intensively with the experts, using them in the most efficient manner. We're trying to divide up the work, and we're looking forward to plowing ahead with our subject matter experts, mapping out the changes that will be requiring public consultation, and then proceeding rapidly to a public consultation phase. I want to thank the tireless work of the executive members and, of course, our 2 task force members. And I would like to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Persifka. Dr. Hawkins? Oops, you're on mute, Dr. Hawkins. I can't hear you.
So will the task force look at intractable pain?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Dr. Thorpe, do you have your hand raised? Or is it up from? Got it. Other questions from board members? All right, Bill, thanks for the update. And it sounds like, I'm going to go to public comment in a minute, but it sounds like the public part of this process will occur sometime in the new year, either in the first or second quarters, perhaps?
Yes, that's correct.
Great, thank you. All right, Sean, let's open it up for public comment.
The Q&A window is still open. Anyone wishing to make a public comment can also raise their hand. And for the any call-in user who'd like to make a public comment, you can press *3 to toggle that hand. First up, we have Rosie Arthur's daughter. Rosie, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. As I said, I'm a forensic neuropsychologist. I'm currently retired. I've worked in exempt sittings for a number of years, and also in the public sector doing analysis and know how to change an organization to work correctly. Now, in 2014, I offered my services for this task force. 2015, I offered my services to this task force. 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. I've never heard a response at all regarding it. And I know where the big problems are in these guidelines. And, you know, there's no room for input even. And one of the big problems with the guidelines that you inherited from the workers' comp people are they were woefully inadequate. They don't even talk about current medications. And these 2016 guidelines were almost immediately rescinded by the CDC themselves because it increased the deaths. And they found out that 49% of the people, legacy pain patients, were adversely affected by the guidelines being misapplied. And we're still living with that. My son isn't, but the rest of us are. There have to be consistent guidelines. They need to be accurate. You know, you can't be depending on content writers and political people, special interest groups who have nothing for the patient or the consumer or whatever. They only have a focus on their bottom line. The workers' comp field, the people who wrote their manual, are 51% defense, and they're not for the consumer. It has invaded our entire process. In these last 6 years, it's turned things over. It took me 8 years to get a medication I had taken reliably for a long time, only be told I'd have to pay $1,100 a month for it, when I can get 3 months worth at Costco for $45. So
30
there are
seconds
some
remaining.
real problems with this process, and it doesn't look like you're getting the input that you need, and certainly not enough public input in this place to tell you what you're looking for. Now, maybe I've pointed out some things that you already know about, but maybe
10
you
seconds
don't.
remain.
Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Ann Fuqua. Ann, are you there? Should be seeing a pop-up on screen or pop up on your screen to unmute your microphone. There you go. Thank you very much. Please go ahead. Send the request to you one more time there, Ann. And I see your mic is open, but it doesn't seem to be picking up your audio.
Are you able to hear me?
There we go. Yeah, please proceed.
Are you able to hear me?
We
Can you hear
can,
me?
yes.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Ann Fuqua. Prior to being in a wheelchair, I was a registered nurse. I am a chronic pain patient who has taken high-dose opioid medications for over 20 years. I have no sleep apnea or endocrinopathy. These medications have drastically improved my quality of life and allow me to be an active member of my community and work part-time. I was so appreciative of the board's guidance advising against the quote unquote dumping of patients on long-term opioids that Mr. Persefka mentioned. This can lead to medical complications including MIs, CPAs, Takotsubo's, cardiomyopathy, and beyond that, I have collected documentation of hundreds of reports of suicides in patients with chronic pain. I'm told the registry I maintain is the largest and most complete collection of adverse effects related to opioid prescribing reduction. And just today, we have yet another report. I would ask that Ms. Arthurs, who described the tragic death of her beloved son, a Marine veteran, to please get in contact with me. I'm on social media. My name is Ann Fuquay. The guidance you've issued is an excellent start, and my hope and prayer is that the prescribing guidelines that you develop will enable physicians to treat patients like myself in a manner that lets us be able to or treat patients like myself without fearing for their career. I pray that your create policies that will allow a space for a patient like me to exist with the best quality of life possible. I would be honored to serve on any committee formed regarding these guidelines, and I just hope and pray that this will be a turning point for patients. And
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. At this time, Ms. Lawson, I do not see any additional requests in queue.
Thank you, Sean. And I did just want to make reference both for Ms. Arthur's daughter and for Ms. Fuquay that there will be a public process early in 2022 that you will be able to engage with and be a part of then. So be on the lookout for more information. Bring it back to the board. Are there any additional questions or comments from board members on this item? If not, we are going to end the board meeting before the scheduled time of 6:30. I think for the first time in many meetings, we've got through all of our business within the time period we had allotted. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to the members of the public who joined our meeting. We will start again at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And just to remind the members of the public as well as the board members, we'll call the meeting to order, and then the meeting is beginning with a closed session to conduct the annual evaluation of the executive director. Once that closed session is concluded, then the open session meeting will start with public comments. So thank you all. Have a good evening, and we will recess until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Thank you.